Hello everyone, this is part 34 of What If Naruto's Mother Was Tsunade Senju, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Previously on Hope of the Senju clan. Did you talk about anything else? Baki asked. Yes, although what he told me was given in confidence and I will not betray his trust, Gaara replied, after which he excused himself from everyone and left the chambers to read his book in peace. When Gaara left, his team was left in bewildered as before, as they weren't sure how to make of this. They couldn't believe that by just talking and listening to Gaara, Naruto had somehow helped Gaara regain his humanity. As Baki and Kankuro digested all this, both of them couldn't help but wonder, just who the hell was Senju Naruto? While at the same time, the blonde-haired kunoichi near them thought, maybe you aren't as bad I thought Senju. Konohagakure. 1 week after the events in the Konoha Council chambers, a certain blonde-haired Senju was sitting atop the Hokage monument on the Yondaime Hokage's head, looking down at the village. This had become a common occurrence for Naruto ever since the incident with the Akatsuki. He had come to this spot at the beginning and end of every day so that he could be alone for a while and think on past events, specifically the council's recent move to enact the Clan Restoration Act, placing both Sasuke and him under it. And if that wasn't enough, he also had to deal with his recent engagement with Gaara's sister, Temari of Suna. He had only agreed to the arrangement to ensure peace for Konoha and prevent another war from breaking out, resulting in more lives being lost. What would you do in my place, Dad? Naruto sighed, as he glanced down at the carving at his father's on the cliff side. Sitting atop of his father's image was his favorite spot on the monument, since in a way it made him feel connected to his father, despite never knowing him. He had of course heard plenty of stories about him from Jiraiya, his mother, Kushina and a few from Kakashi. But still the young boy yearned for more, wishing he could speak to him and getting his advice on things. Sighing again, Naruto looked down at the village that his family founded. How can I expect to become Hokage and protect this village, when I can't even protect myself? At the same time Naruto heard the whining of a small animal, and felt something rub against his leg. Looking down, Naruto saw Kurimaru rubbing against his leg, and staring up with a sad face. Seeing the small pup, Naruto smiled down sadly and began to gently scratch his right ear, knowing that the small dog had realized that something was bothering him and was trying its best to comfort him. Thanks boy, but I'll be alright, but Kurimaru didn't believe him and continued to try and comfort him. Turning his attention away from the pup, Naruto stared back at the village below and thought back to what happened with Itachi and the Genjutsu. Even now the memories of the event were still fresh, and he would still have flashbacks of what happened in the illusion when slept. Damn it, what's wrong with me? Naruto said to himself before noticing his right hand was shaking when he thought back to Itachi. Why do I keep shaking at the mere thought of him? Why can't I move on? Even though his body had recovered from his battle with the two Akatsuki members, Naruto's mental state had not, specifically his confidence. Every time he took his sword or kunai in hand, he felt his hand shaken. Whenever he sparred with Yamato or his mother, he found himself hesitating and doubting himself, something that he had never done before. This became ever more evident in a training session with Team 8, where he sparred off with Shino. During the match, an image of Itachi staring coldly at him replaced Shino for a brief moment, causing the young blonde to freeze in fear. This then allowed the young Aburame to capture him in one of his bug jutsu, allowing him to win the match. And if that wasn't enough, Naruto had nightmares of his time in Itachi's genjutsu, watching his family being killed off one by one in different manner, unable to do anything to stop it. Even though Naruto knew that it had only been an illusion, and that his mother and others were fine, the images still haunted him, as it had felt so real. He had never felt so helpless in his entire life and it worried him, since what if next time it wasn't illusion? After the invasion everyone had commented on how strong he was, a small part of him even began to believe them and that he could protect his family and friends from his enemies. But after his fight with Kisame and Itachi, Naruto realized that he was still too weak to protect those he cared about from those who would come after him. Thinking back to Itachi again, Naruto could not help but shiver slightly. Even though Itachi was not that much older than him, the difference between the two of them was vast, like a chasm. When they fought, not once had he been able to land a solid hit on the former Uchiha heir, who just stared down at him with the same blank look, as if he wasn't even a challenge to him. But what Naruto remembered most about Itachi was his empty eyes, void of any emotion whatsoever. Yet at the same time, held an intensity that he had never seen before in anyone, making it seem as if he could look into the depths of a person's very soul. As Naruto thought more on the matter, he was suddenly waked from his musing by a familiar voice. Naruto, are you all right? Turning to the voice, Naruto saw his teacher Yamato walking towards him. Oh hey Yamato-sensei, greeted Naruto, while smiling weakly at his teacher. I'm fine, just thinking on some things. After serving in Konoha's Anbu division for many years, Yamato developed a knack for when people were lying or hiding something. Naruto was no exception in this case, since the young blonde was easy enough to read, since he wore his emotions on his sleeves. Like many others, Yamato had seen the change in Naruto after the Akatsuki incident. Gone was the lively young blonde, brimming with confidence and determination. He had now been replaced by hesitant young boy, who seemed unsure of himself. Naruto, the Fire Daimyo's congregation will be arriving soon, you need to get ready. With his mother now about to officially become the new Godime Hokage tomorrow, the Fire Daimyo himself and his family were due to arrive at the village for the inauguration ceremony. As the son to the new Hokage, Naruto was expected to greet the royal family with his mother, when they arrived at the village. Sighing again, Naruto nodded and got up from his spot on the Yondime's head and accompanied Yamato down the monument to greet the royal family. Elsewhere in the Hokage mansion, the new Godime Hokage Tsunade was busy going over the Konoha Charter, reading every word carefully and going over every law in the village. Hoping to find some sort of loophole she could use that would allow her to get her son out of the Clan Restoration Act, which her grandfather set up. But despite her best efforts, she had yet to find anything that could help her, at least not without removing the law altogether or creating a new law to counter and remove it. Both of which were impossible without a majority favor from the council. Sighing angrily, Tsunade cursed her grandfather and granduncle for the millionth time, her grandfather for creating the CRA Act, and her granduncle for creating the council. After becoming the Nadaime Hokage, Tsunade's granduncle formed the Konoha Council. On paper the council existed to solely help the Hokage govern the village and to make sure all decisions are made with the best interest of Konoha and its inhabitants in mind. It also allowed the major shinobi clans and civilian population to have a voice in the ruling of the village. But what wasn't widely known was that the council also acted as a counterbalance for the Hokage. Fearing that one day a Hokage in the future may abuse his or her authority over the village. The Nadaime gave the council certain powers to counter the Hokage and ensure the village's survival and make sure that people's rights were upheld and no family or clan was favored more or was persecuted by others. Although the Hokage had final say in most matters involving the village, the council had the power to overrule the Hokage in incidents that threatened the safety of the village, where the Hokage was unwilling or incapable of dealing with them effectively. But they could only do this, so long as the majority of the council was in favor of it. The council also had the power to select a new Hokage if required, but would have to be confirmed by the Jonin Council. Like the Hokage, the council also had the power to create or change laws in the village, but would need the Hokage's finally approval to be accepted. Just as the Hokage would need their approval to make any changes to the Konoha Charter. They even had the power to remove a Hokage from his or her position, but only if the Hokage was found unfit, corrupt or compromised, and even then there would need to be proof and the majority of the council would have to be in agreement before they could act. But in return the Hokage had the power to remove a member of the council from their position if he or she had evidence that proved that the member was undermining the Hokage's authority, or had committed crimes against Konoha. Shortly after Tsunade heard a knock on the door, where after responding with an "Enter," she saw her former apprentice, now assistant, Shizune enter the room. Tsunade-sama, the Fire Daimyo and his entourage are nearing the village, they should be here shortly. Thank you Shizune, I will be down shortly, replied Hokage. Seeing how tired her former teacher was, Shizune decided to speak. Has there been any progress in removing Naruto from the Clan Restoration Act? None, Tsunade replied irritatedly, lifting herself out of her chair. That perverted grandfather of mine made the condition for the Clan Restoration Act specifically clear. With Naru-chan having Mokutonan as the last member of our clan, who is capable of reproducing, he falls under the act. What about Yamato-san? Asked Shizune. He has Mokutonan and would be capable of having children himself. The Sandaime tried to argue that when the council first brought up the act, but since Yamato is not a member of our clan, and only has Mokuton from Orochimaru's experiments, he is not considered an option. The council also argued that Yamato's Mokuton is much weaker in comparison to my grandfather, while Naruto's has the potential to be significantly stronger, which makes the council believe that Naruto is the best candidate. What about the fire Daimyo? Surely he would help you. The younger medic asked, who was certain that the elderly Daimyo would help her master, given how she helped save his son. But to the dark-haired woman's disappointment, Tsunade shook her head. Unfortunately he can't, in accordance with the agreement with the previous fire Daimyo and my grandfather. The fire Daimyo can only intervene on matters that affect him or Hai no Kuni, fire country, he cannot intervene on internal matters of Konoha. But he is the fire Daimyo, stated Shizune. True, but Konoha was given a certain amount of freedom, and unless a law in the village directly clashes with one of the Hai no Kuni's laws, or if a certain event in Konoha threatens to destabilize the country or his power, he cannot do anything about it, and the Clan Restoration Act is an internal matter and is arguably in the interest of Konoha. But you haven't given up then? No, the voluptuous woman replied, it'll just take longer than originally I thought. Nodding to her master, Shizune followed her out of the room, where they made their way out of the Hokage mansion to greet the fire Daimyo and his family. At Konoha's main gate, after making their way down from the mansion, Tsunade and Shizune met with Yamato, Naruto and Kurimaru. Seeing her son, Tsunade smiled and greeted him, which he returned, although the two women could tell it was forced and that he was still dealing with the issues of his confrontation with Akatsuki. Before either of them could talk to Naruto, they heard a shout from one of the shinobi guarding the gate, the Daimyo-sama's entourage is here. Enter Bleach OST, Kingdom Treasure Stamp. Turning, the Konoha party saw the fire Daimyo's entourage marching slowly towards them. At the head of the entourage were 50 mounted soldiers, dressed in bright red armor carrying spears and banners with the symbol of Hai no Kuni and the royal family on them. Behind them were several more banner men on foot, who like some of the mounted soldiers, carried the royal standards of Hai no Kuni and the royal family. Marching behind the banner men were the musicians playing drums, flutes and other instruments. Behind them were 100 palace soldiers from the Daimyo court, dressed in bright red uniforms, carrying spears. Directly behind them was another 100 soldiers dressed in blood-red armor, not unlike a samurai, but somewhat different. Seeing the curious look on Naruto's face, Yamato explained to Naruto that these men were of the Fire Daimyo's royal army, called the Crimson Guard, which numbered of about 10,000 strong men. Although they could not use chakra like samurai and shinobi, they were well regarded for their prowess in battle and for being fierce fighters, especially from the last war. 1. Following after the Crimson Guard, were 10 Hai no Kuni samurai from the Palace Guard, who in turn were followed by several palanquins, which carried the royal family. Behind the palanquins were 10 more Hai no Kuni samurai and another 100 palace soldiers, who were then followed by the baggage train and another 50 mounted soldiers. After a few more minutes, the royal entourage reached the main gate and came to a stop. End Bleach OST, Kingdom Treasure Stamp. Once the royal entourage came to a stop, the Fire Daimyo, his wife and the granddaughter Princess Rurichio got out from their palanquins and slowly walked over the Konoha party. As they made their way over to the Konoha party, they were accompanied by Rurichio's guards Kenru and Enru and 4 other men, who Naruto would later learn were members of the newly reformed Shugon and Junichi, 12 gentlemen guardian ninja. When the royal family reached the Konoha party, Naruto suddenly heard a female voice cry, Naruto-kun. Before he was nearly knocked to the ground by a blonde blur, which groped him. Once he had steadied himself, Naruto saw that the blonde blur was Rurichio, who proceeded to pound her fist into his chest. Idiot, moron, jerk, fool. Did you not realize how worried you made us? Cried the blonde princess before she kicked him hard in the shin, causing the blonde boy to yell in pain. We were worried and wanted to stay until you woke, but Sofu insisted that we return to the capital, saying it was unsafe to remain in Konoha after the attack. I'm sorry Rurichio-chan, I didn't mean to make you worry, it's just that I couldn't stand by and not help when we were being ow. Cried Naruto as he tried to explain himself, but was kicked hard in the shin again by the angry princess. Can you please stop kicking me already? Before the blonde girl could respond, Madame Shijimi suddenly spoke, Rurichio-chan, a princess does not act in such a manner, now leave the poor boy alone, he was doing what he believed was right. After the light scolding from her grandmother, Rurichio mumbled out a small apology and moved back next to her grandparents, who just smiled down at the girl. No sooner had Rurichio returned to their side, Madame Shijimi turned to Naruto and smiled kindly at him. We are very pleased to see that you are well, Naruto-san. Poor Rurichio-chan was frantic when she heard what happened to you after the attack, and we literally had to drag her back to the capital. Aba-sama, cried a now thoroughly embarrassed Rurichio, who was now turning a shade of red that rivaled tomatoes. At the same time, several amused chuckles could be heard coming from both the Konoha party and the Fire Daimyo's entourage. Fortunately though for the princess, their attention was soon turned away from her and to the soon-to-become Godime Hokage, who stepped forward to speak to the Fire Daimyo. Daimyo-sama, on behalf of the people of our village, I would like to welcome you back to Konoha, and assure you that your safety and the safety of your family is our top priority. Thank you, Chuan-san, or should I say Hokage-sama, said the old Daimyo with a small smile. We are very pleased to be back in Konoha. Nodding to the Fire Daimyo, Tsunade then spoke again. I'm sure after your long journey you and your family must be tired. Perhaps you and your family would like to rest for a while. Yes, believe that would be an excellent idea, since the journey was rather exhausting, especially after being cramped up in that small space all day. Nodding again to the old Daimyo, Tsunade was about to lead the royal entourage to the daimyo's private residence in the village. But before she could, her attention was suddenly drawn back to Rurichio, who suddenly spoke up. Oji-sama, if it is all right, could Naruto-kun accompany us back to residence? We would like to talk to him, for we have many questions for him. Of course, if that is all right with Tsunade-san. Yes, of course Daimyo-sama, replied Tsunade, who was a little annoyed by it, since she had wanted to speak to her son, but had decided to let it go, especially since she could not refuse the Fire Daimyo. With the matter now settled, Tsunade then proceeded to lead the royal family and their entourage into the village, where they were greeted by a large number of cheering civilian and shinobi, who were eager to welcome their nation's ruler. Shortly after the Fire Daimyo and his entourage arrived at the village, a lone figure wearing a long purple hooded cloak and a red hanya mask entered the village, and slowly made its way to the Hokage's residence. The Hokage's mansion. After leading the royal family to their private residence, Shizune and Tsunade made their way back to the Hokage mansion to finish up some work that was left to do before the ceremony. Moment after entering the Hokage's office, Shizune and Tsunade were surprised to find 3 Anbu, who had been guarding the office, on the floor and unconscious. Before either kunoichi could react to the sight of 3 of Konoha's elite Anbu lying on the floor, their attention turned to the person sitting in the Hokage's chair, which was turned away from him, and was facing the window overlooking the village. I apologize for the mess, but your people here were a tad overzealous in the duties when I entered your office without an appointment, explained the unknown person who continued to look out the window. I of course tried to tell them that you would not mind and that I would wait here until you returned. But they were rather insistent that they detain me, which was of course unacceptable and led to this sadly. Who are you? Tsunade asked, narrowing her eyes at the intruder, who had yet to turn around and face them. At the same time, Shizune took out a set of senbon needles and moved herself in front of her master, fearing that the person was an assassin, who had come to kill Tsunade before she could become Hokage. I must admit, when I had heard that you were going to become the new Godime Hokage of Konoha, I was surprised. You were quite vocal about not wanting to be Hokage, and when you left you even declared that you would never return to Konoha, continued the unknown person, ignoring Tsunade's question and Shizune's actions. But still it was nothing compared to when I had heard that you had a son. Who the hell are you? Tsunade demanded, losing her patience, which was never a good thing. Oh come now Tsunade-sama, don't tell me you've forgotten me already. I'll admit it's been a couple of years, but I would have thought you would at least recognized my voice. Before the soon-to-be Hokage could respond, the person turned the chair around to face the 2 kunoichi. No sooner had she done this, the eyes of both women widened in recognition and disbelief. You. Seeing the shocked looks on the 2 women's faces, the person just smiled and nodded. It's been a long time Tsunade-sama, Shizune-san. Later at the Fire Daimyo's private residence. Sitting outside in the garden porch of the Fire Daimyo's residence, Naruto was busy filling in Rurichio on what happened during the invasion, as the young princess was eager to hear what happened. Standing not far from him, were Kenru and Enru, who were watching the 2 young predolescents. Both men smiled as they watched over their charge, since they had seen how worried the young fire princess had been for Naruto after the recent invasion, and were glad to see her laugh and smile again. Sitting next to the two was Kurimaru, who was chewing on a small soup bone he had been given earlier. When Naruto first introduced the small pup to Rurichio, the fire princess let out a high-pitched squeal over how cute he was, terrifying the poor pup. But before he could run away from the blonde princess, Rurichio grabbed hold of him and proceeded to squeeze the poor animal in a manner that eerily reminded Naruto of her grandmother Madame Shijimi, when it came to her pet cat Tora. Fortunately though for Kurimaru, Naruto was able to calm Rurichio down and had her let go of the half-wolf, saving the small pup's life, and after much coaxing and reassuring, Kurimaru began to warm up to the fire princess, but only after Naruto made her promise never do that again. When Naruto recounted the events of the invasion, the young fire princess proved to be a very good audience, where she never interrupted him and gasped at all the right moments. When he finished, Rurichio stared at him in awe and a slight bit of reticence. Oh wow, I can't believe you actually did all that, even after all those battles you fought in the Chunin exam. You really are amazing, Naruto-kun. Not really, mumbled Naruto, I just got lucky. Lucky, repeated Rurichio in surprise, how can you just be lucky? You're one of the strongest people I know. Trust me, there are a lot of other people stronger than me, in fact when compared to them, I'm nothing, Naruto replied as he stared down at his teacup and at his own reflection in the tea. As he continued to stare, his reflection slowly turned into images of Kisame, Orochimaru and finally Itachi. At which point, Naruto's teacup began to crack before shattering after being held too tightly. Naruto-kun, are you alright? Cried Rurichio, when she saw the teacup shatter and the tea spill all over his pants. Yay, I'm alright, I must have just held the cup too tightly, Naruto said with a weak smile as he wiped away the tea from his pants. Unconvinced by Naruto's answer and seeing that there was something bothering him, Rurichio was about to ask him again, but before she could even speak a word, Naruto grabbed hold of her and pulled her into the middle of the garden. Naruto, what are you doing? Just stay close to me, Naruto ordered as he moved the fire princess behind him and stared at the hooded figure in front of them, standing where they had just been sitting a moment ago. Seeing the intruder, Rurichio was about to call out to her guards for help, but when she turned to them, she saw both Kenru and Enru lying on the ground, seemingly knocked out by the intruder. Whoever this person is, they're good, I couldn't even see let alone sense them until it was almost too late, Naruto thought. He had only caught a glimpse of a blur when the intruder knocked out Kenru and moved onto Enru. And it was only thanks to listening to his instincts and his sharp reflexes that he was able to move Rurichio and himself out of the way when the intruder attacked. At the same time, Kurimaru, who only moments had been happily chewing his soup bone, now leaped over to his master and stood next to him, growling at the intruder, ready to protect Rurichio. Not bad, you have good reactions, not to mention good instincts, the intruder remarked in a muffled voice, while slowly walking towards Naruto and Rurichio. Who are you? Demanded Naruto, while at the same time analyzing his opponent. The intruder wore a long purple hooded cloak that covered his entire body and wore a red mask in the shape of a hanya, covering his face. Who I am is of little importance, all I want is the princess, if you step aside now and allow me to take her, I will not harm you. Not a chance, Naruto retorted as he moved Rurichio further behind him, while at the same time thinking. Damn it, where the hell are the rest of the guards, aren't they supposed to protect the fire Daimyo, and his family? Don't tell me he took him out, before coming after Rurichio-chan. Hearing Naruto's response, the intruder just smirked behind his mask, in fact the masked intruder seemed pleased by the young boy's action. How sweet, and people say chivalry is dead, but I'm afraid you're out of your depth here, young man. Hey, we'll see about that, retorted Naruto as he activated his chain earring, unwilling to take any chances with Rurichio's life, and at the same time, prepared to draw his katana from his back. But before he could even half draw his katana, the masked intruder disappeared in a blur, and reappeared right behind him. Before Naruto could even realize what had just happened, he was sent flying across the large garden and slammed right into the small outer wall that surrounded the garden, causing a large dent in it. Remarkably though, thanks to his mother's training, Naruto was able to remain conscious. Ooh, damn it that hurt, I haven't been hit that hard since Karchan's bombardment training, whoever this guy is. Not only is he fast, but he's strong too. Slowly, Naruto lifted his head up and turned to the masked intruder, who was now holding a 2-meter-long Shirasaya-style Nodaki, consisting of a simple long brown sheath and handle. Where the fuck did that come out of? Naruto thought, as he tried to figure out where the intruder had been hiding the massive long sword. With Naruto now dealt with, the intruder quickly grabbed hold of Rurichio with his one remaining free arm, and lifted the blonde princess up onto his shoulder. Seeing his master hurt and the princess captured, Kurimaru wasted no time and jumped into action and attempted to bite the kidnapper's arm. But instead bit the masked intruder's sword sheath, who had seen the small pup jump into the air and moved his sheathed sword to block the pup's bite. Once Kurimaru had bitten the sword sheath, the kidnapper then swung his sword around and threw the half-wolf cub into a small pond in the garden. "Kurimaru, let us go, you fend!" screamed Rurichio as she kicked and punched her opponent, who just ignored her attempts at fighting back, like they were nothing. "Naruto-kun, help us. I suggest you stay down and not follow us, otherwise I might not be as kind to you again," said the masked figure before disappearing in a blur with Rurichio. "Rurichio-chan, no!" Naruto cried, before lifting himself up, and taking off after the two. With Rurichio and the intruder. "Let's us go. Let's us go. Do you not hear us?" cried Rurichio as she banged her fist against the masked intruder's back, who was still carrying her over his shoulder, and racing through the forest outside Konoha. "I'm afraid I cannot do that," the masked intruder replied, who suddenly stopped in small clearing in the forest and lifted the blonde princess gently down onto the ground. "When Naruto-kun finds us, he will make you pay for kidnapping us and hurting Kurimaru." "That is if he does come for you," replied the masked intruder. "He will come for us, you can be sure of that," Rurichio retorted angrily, glaring at her kidnapper. Hearing Rurichio's retort, the masked intruder chuckled in amusement. "Hey, you're still as willful as ever, little Rurichio." Surprised by the masked intruder's comment, the young fire princess stared at her kidnapper with suspicion. "Who are you? How do you know of us?" Smirking again, the masked figure slowly lowered his hood and removed his mask, allowing Rurichio to see his face, causing the blonde girl's eyes to widen in surprise. Shortly after leaving the fire daimyo's private residence, Naruto lost sight of Rurichio and her kidnapper. He couldn't even track them, since the intruder left no tracks to follow, proving that not only was this person strong and fast, but was also skilled at cover his tracks. Fortunately though, Naruto was not without tricks of his own and used his chakra no parasu, chakra pulse, technique to track the two them. After a few minutes of racing through the forest outside the village, Naruto finally caught up to masked intruder, but to his surprise was without the Rurichio. "What took you so long?" the intruder joked. "Where's Rurichio-chan?" "Oh my, now where did I put her? I swear I put her here somewhere," said the masked intruder in a rather dramatic manner, pretending to look around for her. "I swear I would lose my head at times if it wasn't attached to me." "Cut the crap, all right, where did you hide her?" demanded Naruto, who could feel his temper rising. "Teask, teask, teask," spoke the masked intruder, while waging his figure, as if scolding an infant. "You should really learn to watch your language, not to mention your temper." "Who the hell are you?" "I told you before, who I am is of little importance," answered the intruder. "The fact of the matter is, I have the princess and if you want her back we're going to play a little game." "What sort of game?" Naruto asked, while raising his right eyebrow, since he didn't like the sound of it. "Nothing big, just you and me one-on-one. If you win, I'll tell you where the princess is." "And if you win?" Naruto asked, but almost immediately regretted asking when he heard the masked intruder chuckle darkly. "You die." No sooner had the kidnapper said this, Naruto fell in a defensive taijutsu stance. But to his surprise the intruder did not move. In fact it seemed as if the kidnapper was waiting for him. "This was your plan all along, wasn't it?" Naruto asked. "You weren't after Rurichio-chan, it was me you wanted. You just used her to lure me outside the village, so make sure that no one came to help." "Perhaps, or maybe I just wanted to have a little fun, before taking the princess away," answered the kidnapper in amusement. Worried about how strong the kidnapper really was, the young Senju heir decided to avoid making the first move and took a defensive stand. Seeing this, the kidnapper frowned slightly. From what I have heard, the boy is normally an aggressive type fighter, who prefers to make the first move. But instead he seems more cautious and is taking a defensive style stance. I guess his encounter with Uchiha Itachi really shook something in him. "Come now, if you don't act now, you'll never find out what happened to the princess," taunted the masked intruder. Knowing he needed to do something, Naruto decided to make the first move, and took out several kunai from his pouch and threw them at the intruder. Unafraid of the flying projectiles, the intruder titled his body slightly, narrowly avoiding two of the kunai and then deflected the third with his sheathed sword. Before Naruto could even register what had happened, the intruder appeared right in front of him and attempted to slash him with his sheathed blade. But thanks to the intensive training under his mother's bombardment training, Naruto was able to avoid the crippling blow in time, if only narrowly. The intruder then continued with his assault, unleashing a series of fast-moving slashes, leaving Naruto little opportunity to strike back. Shit, how can he swing that huge-ass sword around so fast, and with so little effort? As he continued to avoid the masked intruder's slashes, Naruto couldn't help but be reminded of his encounter with the Akatsuki, specifically Kisame, who, like his opponent, could wield his massive sword without any ill effect. But before Blonde Boy could remark further on the similarities of the two sword uses, Naruto was forced to halt his line of thought when he was forced to move his head to dodge a fatal sword stab, which had enough force behind it to go right through his skull. Realizing the danger he was in, Naruto jumped back in an attempt to put some distance between himself and his opponent. After which he began to form hand seals for a Doton ninjutsu attack, but before he could even form his second hand seal for the jutsu, the kidnapper disappeared again and reappeared right behind him. "Too slow," spoke the masked swordsman before he hit Naruto in the back with a powerful swing from his sheathed sword, sending the blonde boy crashing face first into a large tree at the opposite end of the clearing. Struggling to get back onto his feet, Naruto slowly turned to face the masked figure, who had yet to move. "Too fast, I couldn't even follow him. If he had unsheathed his sword in that moment, he would have cut me in two." Wiping away the blood that was now falling from his forehead, Naruto preformed a single-hand seal and thought, "Suten, Teppadama, water-style, gunshot," before spitting out several dozen large globs of water from his mouth. Wasting no time, the masked swordsman charged straight at Naruto, dodging each of Naruto's attacks by inches, with inhuman-like grace, and without once losing momentum. With only seconds to act, Naruto tried to create an earth wall between himself and his opponent. But before the wall could be fully formed, the masked swordsman swung his sheathed sword down and destroyed the wall with one swift stroke, forcing Naruto to jump up into the trees and then propel himself of the tree, to the other end of the clearing to avoid any further attacks. After landing back on the ground, Naruto preformed 3 more quick hand seals and slammed both his hands on the ground, yelled, "Mokuton, Mokoshoku, would release. Wooden tentacles." When Naruto had finished, several dozen wooden tentacles burst out of the ground and raced towards the hooded intruder. So the rumors are true, you really do have the same Mokuton powers of the Shodai Hokage," commented the kidnapper when he saw the approaching wooden tentacles. Unafraid of Naruto's attack, the masked swordsman lifted his sheathed sword up, jumped into the air to avoid the tentacles, just as they were about to envelope him. "That won't work," Naruto shouted as he had his wooden tentacles follow after the masked swordsman, who had landed on top of a large tree nearby. Seeing the tentacles moving toward him, the hooded stranger smirked behind his mask and lifted his sword up, and waited for the wooden tentacles to come closer. Just as the tentacles were atop of him, the stranger leaped forward, and in one quick motion destroyed all of Naruto's wooden tentacles. "Impossible," shouted Naruto, not believing that this unknown person had destroyed all his wooden tentacles with such ease, and without even once drawing his sword. "Just who the hell is this guy?" "Not bad," commented the masked swordsman as he turned to Naruto, "but still I'm far from impressed. I honestly expected more from you, given what I have heard about you from your mother." "Why, you know my mom?" "Of course, in fact I had a rather interesting talk with her and her student Shizune earlier on." When Naruto heard this, the blonde boy's eyes widened in fear, before his face quickly contorted into a look of rage. "If you've done anything to hurt my mother or Shizune, you'll pay." Hey, bold words, but if you lack the strength to back 'em up, that is all they are. "What did you do to them? Tell me," Naruto shouted angrily. "I'll tell you, but only if you beat me," replied the masked swordsman, who then lifted his sheathed sword up again. "Looks like I'm getting to him, but he's not quite there yet." "That's fine by me," yelled Naruto as he jumped into the air and lifted leg up and shouted, "Sutenkyaku, heavenly foot of pain." Familiar with this move, the masked swordsman quickly jumped back into the air to avoid the deadly kick, which hit the ground, creating a large crater and destroying much of the clearing, causing several nearby trees to collapse. Seeing that his opponent had avoided his attack, Naruto quickly chased after him into the forestry and attempted a straightforward punch to the face. But the masked swordsman gracefully sidestepped the punch by spinning around on his heel around Naruto, hitting him in the back of the neck with his sheathed sword, causing him to fall forward, and nearly knocking the blonde boy out. After finishing the strike, the masked whispered, "Kagegeki, coiling strike." Before Naruto could even hit the ground, let alone recover from the strike, the masked swordsman delivered a sharp knee to the gut and followed up with a spinning heel kick to the back, sending Naruto skidding across the ground. "Your strength is impressive, but when you cannot hit me, it's worthless," commented the masked swordsman as he watched Naruto struggle to get up. "Also your moves are much too obvious, making them easy for your opponents to predict." "Gyun," grunted Naruto, struggling to get up while holding his stomach in pain from the knee kick he received from his opponent. "Damn it, I can't even touch him, it just thought Naruto as images of Itachi and what happened in his genjutsu began to flash through his mind. "No. I can't afford to be thinking of that." Slowly picking himself up again, Naruto turned to the masked swordsman and started forming hand seals again. When he finished, he then shouted out, "Mokuton, Konoha Kamisori, would release. Razor leaves." After which hundreds of tree leaves shot out from their branches and began to circle around the masked swordsman. My, remarked the masked swordsman, with hint of intrigue. But just as the spinning leaves were closing in on him, and were about to rip him to shreds, the masked swordsman lowered his sword, so that it would drag across the ground, and began to spin around at high speed, creating a small spinning dust tornado, that blew away the spinning leaves, temporarily blinding Naruto, and blowing him back several meters away. When the masked swordsman stopped spinning, and the dust died down, he simply said, "Gunbu no Ikai, war dance of a single spin, B." But as soon as he had stopped spinning, the masked swordsman spun around and blocked a powerful forward stab from Naruto, who appeared behind him with his sword drawn. "Better, but I'm still not good enough," the masked swordsman remarked, before pushing Naruto's sword away and delivering another sharp knee to the gut. But no sooner had he done this, Naruto reverted into a wooden log, revealing he had replaced himself at the last second. After which the real Naruto appeared behind him with his sword raised, but just as he was about to strike, the masked swordsman turned around, allowing Naruto to catch a glimpse of the person's eyes behind his mask, and in that instant the devil mask was replaced by another person's face, a face that had haunted Naruto's nightmares for the past fortnight, causing him to freeze up in fear. Seeing Naruto freeze, the masked swordsman took advantage of Naruto's hesitation and hit him with his sheathed sword, sending the blonde boy flying back. Recovering quickly, Naruto landed back onto his feet, but when he looked back up to his opponent, he was forced to suppress a small shudder as he remembered the look he saw in the person's eyes, bright green eyes that were void of any emotion whatsoever. Yet they held an intensity that made it seem as if the person was looking right through him. It was a look that Naruto had only seen once before, when he fought Uchiha Itachi. Their eyes, they both have the same look in their eyes, Naruto thought with another shudder, and for a moment the masked swordsman was replaced again by an image of Uchiha Itachi. "Damn it, what the hell is wrong with me?" Naruto yelled inside his head, before he was sent crashing into a nearby tree, by a strong kick from the masked swordsman, who had appeared in front of him. "If you continue to hesitate and allow yourself to become distracted, you're liable to get yourself killed," berated the masked swordsman, who was staring coldly at Naruto. "Whatever issues you may have, I suggest you get over them, as your life is not the only one that hangs in the balance." Knowing that the masked swordsman was right, and at the same time becoming frustrated with how his opponent kept toying with him, Naruto took out several smoke bombs and threw them to the ground, covering the surrounding area with smoke, blinding the masked swordsman. What's he up to now? The swordsman wondered, while keeping his senses alert for an attack. Shortly after the masked swordsman got his answer, where Naruto appeared out of the smoke and attempted to impale the swordsman in the chest with his katana. "Tachio Yogi, treading water," the swordsman silently remarked, recognizing the sword move, before gracefully sidestepping the forward sword stab and using the Kagegeki technique, to spin around and hit Naruto in the back of the head. But as soon as she had hit the blonde boy, Naruto exploded into a puff of smoke. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. The swordsman realized before catching another Naruto coming out of the smoke behind him. Wasting no times, the swordsman spun around and deflected the sword slash with his sheathed sword and then punched him in the stomach, causing Naruto to explode into smoke again. After destroying the clone, another Naruto clone appeared out of the smoke, and swung his katana in a horizontal slash. But when the masked swordsman blocked the slash with his sheathed sword, Naruto pulled his own sword back and switched it from his right to his left hand behind his back, at impressive speed. Catching a glimpse of what Naruto was doing, the swordsman quickly jumped back and narrowly avoided Naruto's sword slash. Nagareru Mizu, following water, well, if I had been careless, he might have gotten me there. It seems Kushina-chan has trained him well, the swordsman thought, smiling behind his mask. Hoping to gain some sort of advantage, the clone pressed forward and attempted to use the Mizu no Atsuan, rolling water, technique to catch his opponent off guard by switch his sword for his left to right hand at the last moment. Sadly for the clone, the masked swordsman was ready for this and ignored the feint slash and blocked the real one, by catching the clone's wrist as he swung his sword. After which the swordsman then hit the clone in the side with his sheathed sword. After destroying the clone, the swordsman caught a glimpse of something disturbing the smoke and flying through the air towards him. Realizing the danger, the masked swordsman titled his head slightly, narrowly avoiding the flying sword that flew right past his head. Seconds later the masked swordsman jumped into the air, after hearing a whizzing sound coming from behind him. No sooner had he done this, a crescent-shaped blade of water flew right through the space he had just been occupying. After landing back on the ground, two more Naruto clones emerged from the smoke and attacked from both sides, one with a kunai and one with a katana. Knowing the danger he was in, the masked swordsman fell to his knee and performed a wide sweeping leg kick, knocking both clones off their feet. After which the swordsman finished them off with a single swipe of his sheathed sword. Attacking from both sides and using Bunkatsu Mizu, splitting water, and Okaru Mizu, falling water, good strategy, but he needs to coordinate his attacks more, the masked individual observed. Before deciding to get rid of the smoke, where he then swung his sword in a wide arc, blowing the smoke away. With the smoke now gone, the masked swordsman searched the surrounding area for any sign or Naruto, and quickly found the blonde boy standing several meters away, finishing a long series of hand seals for a jutsu. At the same time, the swordsman also noticed the surrounding trees and plants were beginning to wither and dry up, as if they were being drained of all their moisture. Looks like he's preparing a suit in ninjutsu, and a large one at that, given the amount of water he is gathering. Once he had gathered enough water from the air and the surrounding plants, Naruto finished his hand seals and roared, Suten, Suiruden no Jutsu, water style, water dragon bullet technique. Creating a massive water dragon that roared and charged straight for the swordsman at high speed, tearing up the ground and destroying any tree that got in its way. Oh my, now that is impressive, looks like I might actually have to get a little serious, the swordsman remarked. As the water dragon neared, the masked swordsman unsheathed his 2-meter-long nodaki, holding his sheath in his left hand and the nodaki in his other hand, and right when the attack was about to hit him. The masked swordsman swung his sword sheath, and with one swing, destroyed the water dragon, causing it to burst into a shower of water. What the? Naruto cried, not believing his own eyes. But before he could even recover from what he had just witnessed, the masked swordsman brought up his massive sword, where for a split second Naruto swore he saw his opponent's eyes glow, and with one powerful swing of his nodaki, his opponent created a powerful shockwave that sent Naruto flying 50 meters away, along with every tree in front of him. Recovering quickly, Naruto performed a quick mid-air flip and landed back onto his feet, but before he could even comment on what just happened, he suddenly heard the swordsman's voice behind him. You open yourself up too much, and was then hit from behind in the back by his opponent's sword and sent flying forward, crashing right back to clearing where they started from. Hua! Cried Naruto after crashing hard onto the ground, struggling to back onto his feet. Who the hell is this guy, and how did he block my water dragon like that? It seems you still have a long way to go, Naruto-kun, commented the masked swordsman, who appeared behind Naruto and was only a few meters away from him. You don't use your power properly, and rely too much on the overwhelming power of your attacks. You still have lots to learn. Just what the hell is with this guy? Naruto screamed inside his head as he looked at his masked opponent. I hope that isn't everything. The swordsman asked, things are finally starting to get interesting, you actually managed to make me draw my sword. As Naruto continued to stare at his opponent, fear started to creep into him, I can't win, this guy, he's just too powerful. At the same time, Naruto began to having flashbacks of his fight with Itachi, and how helpless and completely overwhelmed he felt when he fought the elder Uchiha. And for a moment, for just one singular moment Naruto thought about running away, he was afraid, he was afraid of Itachi, he was afraid of this masked man, more importantly, he was afraid of dying. As if reading his mind, the masked swordsman suddenly spoke, "Are you afraid? Do you want to run away?" Naruto said nothing. "I asked you a question, are you afraid?" When Naruto still didn't answer him, the masked man seemed annoyed. "So this is the extent of the great Senju clan, pathetic." The swordsman spat angrily. "I had expected more from someone like you, you're not the same boy I had heard about, who risked his life to help protect Konohagakure, Hidden Leaf. Your ancestors weep from the graves for having such a cowardly heir." "I'm not a coward," Naruto cried as he tried to deny the swordsman accusation, but the fact was, he was afraid. "Aren't you? Just a moment ago you were just thinking about running away, I saw it in your eyes. You were afraid and were desperate to cling to your miserable life, abandoning the princess, who you claim is your friend. If that is not the actions of a coward, then I don't know what is." Again Naruto did not answer, since it was the truth, even though it was just for a split second, he had wanted to run away. Glaring at the ground and tightening his fist in anger, which were shaking at the same time, Naruto cursed his own weakness, for even thinking of abandoning Rurichio. "You may have the ability, but you lack the will to act, that which is everything. Without that, all your skill and training is worthless," said the masked swordsman, causing Naruto to look up at him in surprise. "I heard about your confrontation with Uchiha Itachi, and by the looks of it, he didn't just defeat you, he broke you." "Broke me," Naruto repeated, not fully understanding what his opponent was telling him. "Yes, he not only beat you physically, he shattered you mentally. When you fought him, he made you feel helpless and weak, as if you were nothing to him. He even made you start doubting yourself, causing you to hesitate and to become afraid to even fight, fearing that you might actually die or lose someone you care about." As the swordsman's words began to sink into Naruto, the blonde boy looked down at his hands, which were still shaking. "How can you hope to protect the princess, your family, or anyone for that matter if you start doubting not only yourself, but your own abilities?" The swordsman asked. "Regardless of how strong or talented you are, there is one key thing that separates the strong from the weak, and that is the will to fight when it seems hopeless. Anyone can fight a person who is weaker than them, or who they know they can beat. But it takes true strength and courage to take on someone who you know is stronger than you, and yet still fights on." Listening to the swordsman's words, and remembering how he needed save Rurichio, Naruto remembered Haku's words from when they first met in Nami no Kuni, Wave Country. When a person has something important they want to protect, that's when they can become truly strong. He also remembered about what the Shodai and the others said to him, how he was the hope of their clan and that they believed in him. Damn it, he's right, I have acting like a coward, but not anymore. Naruto thought as he stopped his hands from shaking and pushed aside the memories of Itachi away. Enter Naruto OST1 Naruto main theme. Slowly Naruto began to pick himself up, while keeping his head down, which prevented his opponent from seeing his face. "Oh. What now, do you plan to run away?" the swordsman asked in a mocking tone, but was surprised when he heard Naruto chuckle. "Hey, you know you were right on the money about me, I haven't been myself lately, and I have been acting like a coward. And to answer your question, I am not going to run away, in fact I intend to beat you," replied Naruto with a new determination in his voice. "Really?" asked the swordsman, who sounded amused by Naruto's statement, "and how do you intend to do that?" "By doing this," Naruto roared where he suddenly slammed his fist onto the ground, which exploded with tremendous force, uplifting the surrounding trees and destroying the area, forcing the swordsman away. My, the apple certainly doesn't fall far from the tree," the swordsman silently remarked in amusement. Despite being forced to jump into air by the power of Naruto's attack, and land a good 30 feet away from him. "I don't care if you're 10 times, 100 times or even 1,000,000 times stronger than me, I will defeat you and save Rurichio, believe it," shouted Naruto as he looked straight at his opponent with a new and determined look in his eyes. "Hey, so he's finally regained his fighting spirit," the swordsman remarked, seeing the strong revolve in Naruto's eyes. "Took him long enough, now let's see what he is really capable of. I might even have a little fun after all," but before he could do anything the masked swordsman was forced to move again when Naruto drew his katana to create a giant crescent-shaped blade of wind that sliced right through a large tree behind him. "That was close," masked swordsman commented before catching sight of Naruto, who was charging straight for him. Once he was close enough, Naruto swung his sword at the masked swordsman, but at the last second used the Mizu no Atsuan technique and switched his sword from his right to his left hand in mid-swing. Seeing what Naruto was doing, the masked swordsman quickly moved back to avoid the sword slash. But to his surprise he found a long diagonal slash across the front of his purple cloak. It was then that the masked swordsman noticed that Naruto's katana was covered in chakra, causing the swordsman to raise his eyebrow slightly. Sneaky brat, at the last second when he was switching hands, he channeled his chakra into his katana, causing me to misjudge the blade's reach. Impressive, you're more skilled with a sword than I gave your credit, but don't think that you're the only one who knows how to use chakra with a weapon, the masked swordsman responded. Before he channeled his own chakra into his massive blade and yelled, "Isen, flash." As he swung it downward, creating an arc-shaped blade of chakra that cut right through Naruto, splitting him in half, who then puffed away, revealing he had been a clone. Realizing had switched himself with a clone, the masked swordsman quickly spun around and blocked several kunai with his sword sheath, which embedded themselves into the sword sheaths. After which the masked swordsman swung his sword sheath and sent the kunai flying back right at Naruto, who was standing atop a large branch above his opponent. Acting fast, Naruto quickly ducked down to avoid the projectiles and then jumped off the tree branch, when he saw the masked swordsman jump towards him. Slicing through the thick tree branch that he had been standing on moments ago, with his massive nodaki, which was still covered in chakra. But no sooner had he done this, the masked swordsman noticed an exploding note stuck to the tree branch, which then exploded after he had cut it. Seconds later, the masked swordsman jumped out of the smoke created by the explosion, slightly singed but otherwise fine. But just as his feet touched the ground, he saw a dozen Narutos emerge from the nearby shrubbery, wielding their katana and racing towards him. Seeing the clones, the masked swordsman immediately sheathed his nodaki and fell into sword-drawing stance and waited for the Narutos to come closer. Once they were close enough, the swordsman drew his nodaki in one swift motion and disappeared right in front of the group of Narutos, before reappearing right behind them. Iaido, way of Ei, said the masked swordsman as he resheathed his nodaki with a resounding click, after which all the Narutos fell the ground. But when the swordsman turned around he was surprised to see that instead of puffing away or returning to their natural element, like most clones, the group of Naruto simply faded away. Genjutsu, thought the masked swordsman in realization, but by then it was too late as a large wooden dome suddenly erupted from underneath him and enveloped him, trapping him within it. But as soon as the large wooden dome had encased itself around the masked swordsman, it shattered into piece, revealing the masked swordsman once again, who was slowly sheathing his nodaki again. After destroying the wooden dome, the masked swordsman simply said, "Iagiri, Ei beheading," where his sword clicked closed. At the same time, 8 Naruto clones burst out of the ground surrounding the mysterious swordsman and attacking from all sides. Unafraid by the surprise attack, the swordsman once again redrew his nodaki with a swiftness that should not have been possible with such a massive sword and used the Gunbu no Ikai technique to create a dust-large tornado around him, blasting all 8 clones away and causing them to disappear in a puff of smoke. But just as the swordsman had finished his technique, several wooden roots sprung out of the ground and wrapped themselves around his legs, preventing him from moving. At the moment, another Naruto emerged out of the ground in front of him with his fist raised and charged up with chakra. Knowing that he wouldn't be able to avoid the approaching attack, and at the same time not having enough time to bring up his nodaki, the masked swordsman quickly brought up his sword sheath, which he held in his left hand, to block the punch. As soon as Naruto's fist made contact with the masked swordsman's sword sheath, a small explosion erupted, creating a small cloud of dust around the two. Within seconds of the explosion, the masked swordsman emerged from dust cloud flying back several meters, tearing up the ground as he struggled to keep his feet on the ground. Eventually the masked swordsman came to a stop, and was remarkable uninjured, although his sword sheath had been completely destroyed by Naruto's punch. Now that's more like it. His strength may not be at the level of Tsunade-sama, but it is still something to behold. He actually destroyed my sword sheath and my arms numb from the force of the attack. Throwing away what was left on his sword sheath, the masked swordsman looked over to Naruto, who was standing in a small crater, and was surprised to see him disappear into a puff of smoke, revealing him to be a shadow clone. But before he could ponder on the matter further, the swordsman noticed a large number of the surrounding trees and shrubs were drying up and dying. It was then that the swordsman saw the real Naruto along with two more clones, hidden behind several trees and shrubs, which had now died from all their moisture being drained from them. Recognizing the hand seals that Naruto was using, the masked swordsman knew what was coming, but before he could do anything, Naruto finished his hand seals where a massive water dragon formed around him. At the same time, the two Naruto clones converted their chakra into their respected elements, where the first converted his chakra in lightning and the second into wind. When the two elements combined with the water dragon, the three Narutos shouted out, Mizu Fu, Konbo Rakurai, Psycho no Suiruden Dinaki, Water, Wind, Lightning Combo, Supreme Electric Water Dragon. Once it was formed, the massive wind and lightning enhanced water dragon charged straight towards the masked swordsman, tearing the ground as it moved and destroying everything that was in its path. You really are something else, Senju Naruto, but now the time for play is over, said the masked swordsman as he readied his Nodaki, where within seconds the massive water dragon was atop of him and exploded cover much of the area in a vapor-like mist. End Naruto OST 1 Naruto main theme. Did I get him? A panting and sweating Naruto asked himself, while his two clones disappeared in a puff of smoke, since his attack used up a significant portion of his chakra. But before the vapor-like mist could even die down, a massive chakra arc erupted from it and flew straight for Naruto, who only avoided it by a hair's breadth. What the? Naruto thought, before he saw the masked swordsman appeared right in front out of nowhere, swinging his massive sword to the left side of his neck with the intent of beheading him. But just before the blade could connect, a voice out of nowhere suddenly shouted, enough. Where the masked swordsman halted his blade, an inch from Naruto's neck. Who? And just when I had finished warming up, sighed the swordsman sadly, while pulling back the large sword, placing it on his shoulder, while Naruto fell back on his rear over what had just happened. Looks like he passed, don't you agree, Tsunade-sama? At the mention of his mother, Naruto quickly turned to the direction that the masked swordsman was looking at and saw Tsunade, Shizune and an unharmed Rurichio, looking very anxious, appear out of the tree line. Unknown to Naruto, the three had been watching his battle from a distance under an illusion that kept him from seeing them. Dumbfounded by the sudden appearance by the three, Naruto could only stare and say, Ka-chan, Ne-chan, Rurichio-chan. Naruto of course would have said more, but before he could Rurichio raced over to him enveloping him in a tight hug, much to the irritation of Tsunade and the amusement of Shizune and the masked swordsman. Naruto-kun, are you alright? Are you hurt anywhere? The fire princess asked in a fast pace, while checking for Naruto any injuries. I'm fine, Rurichio-chan, assured Naruto, where he tried to say more, but was again interrupted by Rurichio, who turned to the masked swordsman and glared at him. You promised you wouldn't hurt Naruto-kun, you were too rough. In response to the blonde princess's rebuke, the swordsman just laughed. Phew, come now Rurichio-chan, Naruto is a tough boy, he can take a few little hits. And to be honest, I only said I would go easy on him. Stunned by how familiar Rurichio was with her kidnapper, Naruto turned to the blonde princess. Rurichio-chan, you know this person? Of course, she's my favorite auntie, Aunt Kimmy, Rurichio replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Naruto on the other hand could only stare in disbelief and think, auntie. As he looked back and forth between Rurichio and her aunt who was standing over the two. Can someone, please, tell me what the hell is going on? Naruto cried, not understanding anything. Sparing a sympathetic smile for her son, Tsunade decided to answer his question. I suppose introductions are in order. At which point the masked swordsman removed his mask and pulled back his purple cloak, revealing that Rurichio's kidnapper was indeed a woman. Naruto, allow me to introduce you to the first daughter and princess to the fire Daimyo, Princess Kimiko, too, who also just so happens to be Princess Rurichio's aunt and godmother. A pleasure to finally meet you, Naruto-san, the now revealed fire princess said in an elegant and rich voice, that was befitting of noble lady of her status, while smiling and bowing politely to him. Too shocked to say or do anything, Naruto just stared at the elder fire princess and thought, Princess. Aunt. After a few more minutes of staring at Princess Kimiko, Naruto was brought back to his senses, thanks to a hard smack to the back of the head, courtesy of Rurichio, who decided to snap Naruto out of his stupor. Ow. Naruto cried after the smack, before realizing what he had been doing and quickly apologized, although at the same time thinking, how the hell do I keep getting into these types of messes? Once he was back to his senses, Naruto quickly took in Princess Kimiko's now revealed appearance. The princess was a tall, slender yet shapely built woman with fair skin and green eyes, similar to Rurichio's, and an attractive face. She had waist-length black hair, like the fire Daimyo and his wife, with shorter bangs in a Heim-like style. She was dressed in rather simple attire that consisted of a white yukata with a purple sash, which matched her purple cloak, and black belt and wooden sandals. But despite her simple appearance, she held herself up in a dignified and graceful manner, befitting her royal lineage. In her hands she held her Hanya mask right and her Shirasaya Nodaki in her left. 3. After full taking Kimiko's appearance in, Naruto turned to his mother. "Ka-chan, what is going on? Why did Rurichio-chan aunt attack us and kidnap Rurichio-chan, and what did she mean I passed? Was there some sort of test?" "Yes," replied Tsunade. "You see, Naruto, many of us noticed the effects your fight with Itachi had on you, especially during your spars. You were hesitating more and seemed unsure of yourself and would often become distracted. So we came up with this plan in the hope of getting you to overcome your issues, which you did." Knowing this was true, Naruto just nodded. But even so, Naruto didn't like the way his mother and Shizune handled the matter. He was even more annoyed at the fact that Rurichio was part of it, given how worried he had been for her. But before he could rebut his mother or elder sister, Kimiko intervened, seeing the anger form on Naruto's face, after learning everything had been staged. "Please do not be angry with your mother or the others, Naruto-san. This was all my idea and I was the one who convinced your mother and Shizune-san. Rurichio-chan also had no idea of what was happening until I explained it to her after I had taken her. This was all your idea." "Yes. I arrived shortly after my parents and their entourage arrived, where I met with Tsunade-sama and Shizune-san. During our conversation she mentioned the events with you and Itachi-san and the effects it had of you, and so I suggested this test to help you overcome your problem. I then secretly met with my parents and they agreed to help by pulling back the majority of the guard. I guess that explains why no one came to help when she attacked Rurichio-chan and me," Naruto thought. "It also explains why Ka-chan and the others didn't come to help when I signaled them with my earring. But I still don't get this." Naruto asked angrily, "Why did you have to make me go through all this? Couldn't there have been another way?" "Unfortunately no," answered Princess Kimiko. "I will admit it was a tad extreme, but given what I had heard. After your battle with Itachi, you began doubt yourself, your abilities and allowed your fear of being weak and helpless to take hold of you. To overcome that, you needed to face the same situation again, to be alone, facing an opponent who was vastly superior to you, and who held someone you cared about. Only then could you possibly find the strength to move past it and persevere, even if the situation seems desperate." Thinking back to the fight, Naruto remembered Kimiko's words from earlier and the way she had been goading him. "You may have the ability, but you lack the will to act, that which is everything. Without that, all your skill and training is worthless. How can you hope to protect the princess, your family, or anyone for that matter if you start doubting not only yourself, but your own abilities? Regardless of how strong or talented you are, there is one key thing that separates the strong from the weak, and that is the will to fight when things seem dire. Anyone can fight a person who is weaker than them or who they know they can beat. But it takes true strength and courage to take on someone who you know is stronger than you, and yet still fights on." Realizing what Kimiko had been really trying to do, the blonde boy let out a tired sigh, while Rurichio helped him to his feet. "I guess I really was afraid of letting everyone down. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to protect Ka-chan and everyone else. Fear is nothing to be ashamed about, Naruto-san. Everyone is afraid at some point. In fact, it can be a good thing at time, since it prevents us from doing something foolish. It only becomes a problem when we allow fear to take hold of us and rule us," Kimiko answered with sage-like wisdom. "I guess," Naruto returned, "but it's just that, I can't help but worry what would happen if someone attacked us, or tried to hurt Ka-chan and the others to get to me. I don't want to ever feel or experience what I did in Itachi's illusion ever again." "Naru-chan," Tsunade spoke softly, now seeing how much worry had been on her son's mind lately. "You shouldn't place such heavy burdens on yourself. You may be a shinobi now, but you're only 12, it's my job to look out for you, you needn't worry about me. You've years before you have to worry about so much. That was what I have been trying to tell you." "Tsunade-sama is right, Naruto-san," joined Kimiko, "don't take so much onto yourself. There is no shame in relying on others, especially when they want to help you. Understanding what Kimiko was telling him, Naruto simply nodded, but he soon turned his attention to his mother after realizing something. What would have happened if I had failed? If you had failed, I would have been forced to place you on the mandatory leave and restrict your movements to the village until such a time as I deemed you fit to return to active duty. Sighing again, Naruto just nodded, since he wouldn't have blamed his mother if she had, especially considering how he had been acting lately. Seeing how serious the atmosphere had turned, Kimiko decided to intervene and change the mood of the conversation into a pleasant one. By inviting the Senju family to have dinner with her family tonight and celebrate Tsunade's coming appointment as Hokage. Not wanting to be rude, to both the Fire Princess and the royal family, Tsunade and the others accepted, much to delight of both Fire Princesses. After which the group then slowly made their way back into the village. A few hours later, and that's what happened, Naruto finished after retailing his fight with Kimiko to Kushina, who was lying in her hospital bed, still recovering from her fight with Itachi and Kisame. After his returning to the village, Naruto had decided to go visit his sensei in the hospital. Even though he had finally come to terms with what had happened with the Akatsuki and accepted that there were some things he could do nothing about, he still felt somewhat guilty for his sensei's injured state. Hey, so Kimiko-chan finally knocked some sense into you, it's about time. I was beginning to think that I would have to beat some sense into you myself, if you kept acting like some emo. Hey, I wasn't that bad, Naruto retorted, where Kushina just shrugged. Well, maybe you weren't a totally emo, but close enough if you ask me, especially given how much you were moping. Shrugging, Naruto then looked back at his red-headed sensei, when he realized the familiar manner Kushina had referred the Fire Princess in. Do you know Kimiko Haim? Yay, back when I was around your age, she often visited Konoha with her father and we became fast friends. She was sort of a big sister figure to me when I was growing up. Not unlike how the Sandaim's grandson Konohamaru views you. In fact, she was the one who got me interested in swordsmanship and helped me develop a Raijin no Mai, Dance of the Raging Water Goddess. 4. Seriously? Naruto asked in surprise, to which Kushina just nodded. I guess that explains how she was able to avoid and block my sword attacks so easily. She helped Kushina-sensei create it. She's really strong, Naruto remarked, as his thoughts turned back to Princess Kimiko. Trust me, Naruto, as strong as you think she is, Kimiko-chan is stronger. In fact, she could probably give Tsunade-sama a serious run for her money. After hearing Kushina's statement, Naruto would normally have thought that his sensei was being overdramatic, since his mother was credited of being the strongest kunoichi alive. But after fighting the Fire Princess and seeing firsthand how strong she was, he believed his teacher. Although he was certain that his mother would still win in a fight between the two of them. He knew it would not be without cost, and that she would have a hard time fighting the Fire Princess, especially since she was no longer in her prime, unlike the princess. I still can't believe that she's the Fire Daimyo's daughter. She's not at all what I would expect from a princess, Naruto remarked, causing Kushina to smirk. Yay, well, Kimiko-chan is sort of a black sheep in her family. She never enjoyed being royalty or dressing up in fancy clothes and things like that. Like me, she was more tomboyish, which was probably why the two of us got along so well when we were kids. She fell in love with the swords arts and convinced the Fire Daimyo to let her train and then later trained in the samurai arts. So she's a samurai, like Kensei-sensei. Naruto said, remembering his former sword instructor. Yay, nodded Kushina. During the last war with the other great nations, Kimiko joined the Crimson Guard and earned a pretty infamous reputation. She is pretty well known and feared, even in the shinobi nations, where many refer to her as the Akuma no Hime, the Devil Princess. Thinking back to when he and the others returned to the village and were walking back to the Fire Daimyo's residence, Naruto remembered seeing several shinobi stopping and staring at Princess Kimiko with a look of awe and fear. At first he thought that they simply recognized her as the Fire Daimyo's daughter, but now he realized that was only half true. They had recognized her as the famed Devil Princess of Hai no Kuni. A name that Naruto thought was fitting since she fought like a devil. If Princess Kimiko is so strong, why isn't that I haven't heard of her until now? Kimiko-chan doesn't really like much attention and prefers to stay out of the spotlight, and after the war she left to go traveling to see more of the world and to improve her swordsmanship. But even so, any serious shinobi, or samurai for that matter, would know of her, or at least heard of her. especially if the recent rumors are true. What rumors? That she now holds the title of Kensei, Sword Saint. 5. Kensei, what's that? Is it like the title of the Sannin? Naruto asked, never hearing of the title before. Sort of, answered Kushina, it's a title that is only given certain sword users, whether they be shinobi, or samurai, and only given to the strongest sword user in the world, and to do that you must defeat the previous holder of the title. So she must have defeated the last holder. That's what they say. The last holder of the title was Yagyu-Mifune, the general of Tetsu no Kuni, which is the samurai's version of a Hokage, which tells you a lot about him. Again, Naruto was not surprised to hear this, as it only confirmed what he already believed about the Fire Daimyo's daughter, that she was not someone that should be taken lightly. What's with her sword then? When I fought her, it seemed different from other swords I've seen before. She was able to destroy even my strongest attack with just a swung of her sword and didn't even use any chakra, and she blocked my punch with just her sword sheath. Well, the sheath is made from a special tree that is grown and fed with chakra, not unlike the ones that are used to make affinity paper, which allow people to find out the nature affinities. Now, unlike those these trees are a lot rarer due to the fact that the wood from these trees are a lot stronger, making them difficult to cut and shape. The wood is as strong as stone, but weighs the same as a normal piece of wood, and can still absorb a certain amount of chakra. That explains how she was able to block my enhanced punch with just her sword sheath. Naruto thought, as he had now solved one mystery, but what about her sword? Her sword is no ordinary sword, it's a Muramasa sword. A Muramasa sword, repeated Naruto, not understanding the significances. Yes, or as most people refer to it as, Yoto Muramasa, Muramasa Demon Blade, Kushina explained. According to legend long ago, there was once a talented swordsmith by the name of Senju Muramasa, who created some of the finest blades you could ever find, and could cut through or withstand almost anything. In fact, it is said that if a leaf were to simply land on the blade of a Muramasa, it would be split in two. But why do they call it a demon blade? Naruto asked, feeling a little nervous at the moment, remembering the number of times he had nearly met his end by said sword. Well, according to legend, while Muramasa was a skilled and talented swordsmith, he was also violent and ill-balanced and on the verge of madness, explained Kushina. She then paused for a moment, as talking about Muramasa reminded something she had once heard. About how madness and genius went hand in hand, probably explains why so many gifted people like Orochimaru and others turned out the way they did. Kushina then spent the next minute or two thinking about other talented shinobi she had known, who also seemingly lost their minds, or simply turned twisted. But eventually she turned back to her original thoughts and went to finishing her story. Now, according to story, when Muramasa was making his swords, he was supposed to have passed on all these negative feels into his blades, where they became cursed sword. Cursed? Yes, answered Kushina, it's said that whoever wields an Yoto Muramasa, not only would they become a fearsome swordsman with few equals, but they would be filled with an insatiable thirst for blood and battle, that would eventually drive them mad and cause them to kill themselves. In fact, it rumored that when a swordsman sheathes an Yoto Muramasa, if they have not spilt the blood of someone else, the user is required to cut himself on it. It's also said that only the strongest of willed people can even hope to resist the urges of an Yoto Muramasa and not go mad. It was for that reason that so few Yoto Muramasa remain, since most people fear them and had them destroyed. Aren't you worriedly what will happen to Princess Kimiko? Naruto asked, as he was more than a little concerned about Princess, after hearing the sword's history. Smiling at this, Kushina reached over and ruffled Naruto's spiky hair in a kindly manner. You needn't worry, brat. Kimiko-chan is one of the strongest willed people I know, and she wouldn't let any old sword control her, although I would advise to try and stay on her good side, as she is not someone you want as an enemy. Having already known this, Naruto just nodded, since he had already made a mental note to stay on the Fire Princess's good side, if at all possible. For the next half hour, Naruto and Kushina continued talk about Princess Kimiko, where Naruto mentioned how he and his family had been invited to dinner with the royal family and invited her to join them. At first, Kushina was reluctant to accept the invitation, stating that she didn't want to intrude. But Naruto insisted that it would be fine and went on to say that Fire Princess would no doubt enjoy seeing her again. After a few more minutes of coaxing, Naruto eventually broke the red-haired Jonin and got her to agree to come. Although it didn't hurt that Kushina was already on the verge of going stir-crazy from her long stay at the hospital. Once Kushina had agreed to come to the dinner, Naruto decided to ask his sensei, something that had been on his mind for a while. Kushina sensei, Naruto said slowly, gaining his teacher's attention. What can you tell me about Uchiha Itachi? At the mention of the traitorous Uchiha, Kushina's mood darkened, where a large frown appeared on her normally attractive face. Why do you want to know? Naruto of course couldn't blame her for becoming angry at the mention of Itachi, given how he was part of the reason why she was here. Well, he's part of the Akatsuki now, and sooner or later I'll probably have to face him again at some point, so I thought it would be best if I know about as much as I can about him. At the mention of him having to face Itachi again, Kushina's frown grew and stared directly into Naruto's eyes, as if searching for something, which unnerved the blonde boy a little. Given how he was not used to his teacher staring at him so intensely and seriously. But after about a minute or so she turned away and stared up at the ceiling, as if glaring at it for some reason. For another minute or so Kushina said nothing, and continued to stare at the white ceiling. But just as Naruto was about to say something, she suddenly spoke. I know Itachi about as well as anyone, although that doesn't say very much. Even at an early age Itachi was an inscrutable individual, nobody not even his own parents could fully understand him, or know what he was thinking. But even so, nobody could question the fact that he was a gifted child, maybe even more talented than your father Naruto. At the mention of Itachi being possibly more gifted as a shinobi than his father, Naruto's eyes widened in shock. He had always heard from Jiraiya and others within Konoha, that his father had been one of the most gifted shinobi who ever lived. Even his own mother, who hated his father for turning him into a Jinchuriki, acknowledged his skill, and stated that he had been stronger than her. Seeing the shocked look on Naruto's face, Kushina just nodded and continued. Itachi was always very intelligent for his age, and very perceptive and analytical. He was very quick-witted, controlled, disciplined and clear-headed, he showed great maturity, responsibility and intuitiveness, far beyond his age, and was he rarely caught off guard or deceived. In fact, I don't think I ever saw him look surprised in his entire life, even when he was in Anbu. But even then he seemed to have softness to him, especially when it came to Sasuke, where he would often spend time with him in an attempt to make up for their father's neglect. Neglect? Naruto asked curiously. Like most parents, who are blessed with a gifted child, Itachi and Sasuke's father Fugaku focused most of his time on Itachi. He believed that Itachi would bring even greater fame and glory to the Uchiha clan. This of course left little time with Sasuke. But even with their father neglecting Sasuke, Itachi and Sasuke were about as close to one another as brothers could be. So why did Itachi kill their clan? Nobody knows. Some people say that Itachi secretly despised his clan and left his brother alive so that he would be alone and be tortured by the memories of their clan being gone. Others say that Itachi went mad due to all the pressure he had been put under and because of the trauma he suffered during Black Ops missions. A few on the other hand say that he simply decided to follow the same dark path as Uchiha Madara. When Kushina finished, Naruto's thoughts turned back to his meeting with the Shodai and the rest of his family. He then remembered what the Daimyo Hokage had told him about the Uchiha clan being a cursed clan, and how their feelings could turn them dark and cause them to fall into a deprived path. Could that be what happened to Itachi? Naruto thought before turning back to his teacher. What do you believe? To be honest, I don't really know what to believe, Kushina replied with a small sigh. Like I said, Itachi is an inscrutable person, nobody really knew him. But I know for certain he didn't simply go mad or broke under the pressure he was under. Our recent fight with him proved that. When I saw him, he was just as I remembered him, calm, cool, collective and aware of everything that was around him. I can only guess that there is more to what happened that night than what most people think. What do you mean? I always found it odd that no one ever heard or saw what was going on in the Uchiha district that night. Not to mention the fact that Itachi alone wiped out his clan and the entire military police force. As skilled as he was, even Itachi had limits. Then there is the fact that Itachi left Sasuke alive. Itachi was not someone who would do something on spur of the moment or to be simply cruel. He always had a plan or a reason for what he did, meaning that there is something we aren't seeing. After hearing his teacher's reasoning, Naruto found himself agreeing with her, since there were things that didn't make sense, and made a mental note to try and figure out what really happened that night. Thinking about Itachi and what he was like before he fled Konoha, Naruto's thoughts suddenly turned to Sasuke. What was Sasuke like back before Itachi wiped out their clan? At the mention of Sasuke, a sad look appeared on Kushina's face, where once again she stared back up at the ceiling and said nothing for several minutes. Before Itachi wiped out their clan, Sasuke was very different from what he is now. In fact, he was a lot like you. Me, repeated Naruto in surprise, to which Kushina nodded. When Sasuke was younger, he was a kind, sweet, and cheerful young boy, who always smiled and was polite to everyone he met. Think back to then, Kushina smiled, remembering the times she had visited her friend Mikoto and met Sasuke. But just as quickly her mood turned sad. But that all changed when Itachi killed their parents and their clan. It was probably made even worse since it was Itachi who did it, since Sasuke idolized Itachi when he was younger. After his clan was killed, Sasuke became cold, indifferent, cruel, cynical and somewhat arrogant, focusing solely on killing Itachi and avenging his parents and clan. Didn't you try to help him? Wasn't his mother your friend? I tried, but unfortunately there was little I could do since my duties in Anbu took up most of my time, and anyone that tried to get close to Sasuke, he simply pushed away. For the most part, one have kept my eye on him during my off times, making sure that he was safe, and on more than one occasion I have thought of trying to take him in. Why couldn't you? Well, ignoring the fact that I was in Anbu, and even if I had retired from Anbu, I couldn't take him in since he was the sole surviving heir of a shinobi clan with an important bloodline limit. There are laws that prevented other shinobi clans and families from adopting or taking in those with bloodline limits into their families. These laws were created so that no one shinobi clan or family could steal another clan's abilities and skills for themselves or become too powerful. When Kushina finished, Naruto could only frown, and began to wonder if he had gone through what Sasuke did. If he had lost his family, would he have turned out the same way? After thinking about it for several minutes, Naruto quickly pushed such thoughts away. He knew it did not do well dwell on such matters and decided to turn the conversation away for the Uchiha tragedy. Hey sensei. Yes. How do you feel about Kachan become the god-I'm Hokage tomorrow? Knowing how it had been his sensei dream to become the first female Hokage in Konoha, Naruto was curious as to how she felt about his mother becoming it instead of her. Smiling, Kushina turned to her student. If you're worried that I am angry or bitter about it, you don't have to worry, because I'm not. Tsunade-sama is a fine choice. I'll admit I am a little disappointed in not becoming the first female Hokage, but I can't deny that she is the better choice. Still, that doesn't mean that I have given up on becoming Hokage, said Kushina, where she slowly began to smirk. So don't think for 1 second that you will become Hokage before me. Hey, you're on sensei, responded a now grinning Naruto, where the two of them continued to talk and laugh for the rest of the afternoon. Later that night the Senju family, including Tonton and Kurimaru, and Kushina arrived at the fired daimyo's private residence. Due to the fact that they were having dinner with the royal family of Hai no Kuni, Shizune had insisted that they wear proper attire for the event, much to the annoyance of both Tsunade and Naruto, who hated dressing up in such attire. Naruto wore a simple light blue kimono, with dark blue belt, that held the kimono around his waist. Shizune on the other hand wore a formal pink and gold kimono where the upper portion of the kimono was pink while the bottom part and edgings were gold with flower patterns. Around her waist she wore a cream-colored obi with leaf designs and a small gold robe to help keep her kimono together. All in all, Naruto had to admit that his elder sister looked very lovely, but what surprised Naruto even more was that Shizune also wore makeup, which was exceedingly rare, given how Shizune rarely ever wore makeup. Like Shizune, Kushina's dress in a very stylish purple kimono adorned with flower designs and a matching obi around her waist. When Naruto first saw his sensei in her kimono, he had been stunned with how elegant she looked, where the dress matched well with her hair color, which fell down to her rear and had a small yellow flower tied behind her head. His mother on the other hand was probably the most stunning of the three. She wore an elegant orange kimono with leaf and floral patterns, along with a red obi around her waist tied in a large bow behind her back and a small green rope over it. Like Shizune, Tsunade wore a light shape of makeup and had done her hair up in a bun, which was held together by 2 hairpins, giving her a refined look, making her look every bit the princess people referred to her as. 6. When they arrived at the Fire Daimyo residence, they were greeted by Kimiko, who was dressed in the traditional attire of a miko that consisted of a purple hakama, a white haori with a sash-like belt, wooden sandals and a white ribbon to partially hold her hair in place. At first Naruto had been surprised by the rather simple attire that the princess was wearing, but he then remembered that Kushina had told him that Kimiko hated royal lifestyle and preferred simpler things. Upon seeing Kushina, Kimiko immediately raced over to her old childhood friend and hugged her tightly, which Kushina more than happily returned. Once Kimiko greeted everyone, she led the group into the building and into the dining room, where the royal family was already seated at the long dining table, which was laid with food that was fit for a feast. Both the fire daimyo and his wife wore the traditional robes and attire, while Rurichio was dressed in a formal light pink kimono adorned with floral patterns, similar to the one she had worn when they had first met. Her hair was held back by a brown hairband with a red ribbon with two gold-colored embellishments tied on her left side. Upon greeting the royal family, Kimiko led the group to their seats. The fire daimyo and his wife were seated at the head of the table, with Rurichio to their right, Kimiko to their left. Naruto was seated next to Rurichio, along with Shizune, while Kushina and his mother sat opposite them next to Princess Kimiko. Dinner was of course very good, where even Tonton and Kurimaru were enjoying themselves. When Kurimaru first arrived, the young half-wolf was of course weary of the elder fire princess and even growled at her a little, showing that he had not forgiven her for throwing him into the pound. But all that changed when Kimiko handed him a rather large sirloin steak. Needless to say, it was obvious that all was forgiven in the young pup's mind, who happily dug into the steak. As the group continued with their meal, Tsunade and the others praised on how delicious the food was and give the compliments to the chief. It was then that Madame Shijimi mentioned, to the surprise of everyone, that Kimiko had been the one who had cooked and prepared the meal. "You cook?" Kushina asked in surprise. "Of course," the fire princess said, smiling. "I have been traveling for some time, and I do need to eat like everyone else. And I thought it would be nice to cook for everyone, since it's been a while since I've seen any of you." "Well, you certainly have a talent for it," replied Kushina, taking another bite from her meal. "You'll make a pretty good bride." "Ho ho ho ho, now Kushina-chan, don't be saying things like that, you'll make me blush," Kimiko returned, pretending to be embarrassed and playfully swatting her friend's arm. "But speaking of being a bride, tell me, have you taken any steps?" At this remark, Kushina almost chopped on the piece of meat she had been eating before finally swallowing it, where she then turned to her friend. No, I haven't really found anyone that has interests me," the redhead replied with a slight blush. Not feeling exactly comfortable talking about her personal life, or lack of thereof, especially in front of the fire daimyo and his family. "Oh, don't be embarrassed, Kushina-chan, there is nothing wrong with that. Although I should warn you, time is ticking and you're not as young as you once were," said Kimiko in a teasing tone, causing a small tick to appear on Kushina's head, who was slightly irked by the remark. Knowing what type of game her friend was playing, Kushina decided to fight fire with fire. "Hey, you're one to talk, you're not getting any younger yourself, Kimi-chan," emphasizing her old nickname. "And is that a gray hair I see?" To her credit, the elder fire princess did not react to the remark and continued to smile, as if nothing was wrong. But if one looked closely, they would see a small tick form at the back of her head as well. For the next few minutes the two women continued the verbal spar with one another, making small teasing comments and remarks about one another's age, weight, height, hair, temperament and other things, all under the guise of a simple friendly conversation. The rest of the group of course caught on to what was going on between the two women and decided to watch them, finding it to be a great source of entertainment. Although at times Naruto almost thought the two of them would clash swords with one another, given how much they were going at it, even if it was just friendly teasing. There were even times where Naruto could have sworn he saw lightning spark between them. But after a while the two relented on their teasing of one another and soon turned their attention to Naruto and Rurichio, much to the dismay of the two blondes. "Rurichio-chan," said Kimiko with a smile that was far too sweet and in a tone that was equally as sweet. "Tell me, is there anyone that has taken your interest?" "No," she denied, although it was obvious to everyone that there was someone, given how quickly she denied it and how red her face had now become. "Oh really?" asked Kimiko with a knowing smirk. "Yes," Rurichio huffed with no small amount of annoyance, "and even if there was someone we liked, we do not see how it is any of your business, auntie." 7. "Oh come now Rurichio-chan, don't say that," said Kimiko in the same sweet tone, "there's nothing wrong with me being curious about my favorite niece. We are your only niece. Which makes you even more important to me, so why don't you tell us? We won't tell, that is unless said person is here," continued Kimiko, who was still smiling evilly at her niece, who then glanced at Naruto, turning an even brighter shade of red. Seeing the glance, Kimiko and Kushina's smiles grew, making them seem all the more sinister in the eyes of the two blondes. Shizune, the fired Daimyo, and Madame Shijimi on the other hand just chuckled as Kushina and Kimiko began to torture the two children, finding the scene very amusing. The only one though that didn't seem to enjoy the line of questioning was of course Tsunade, who maintained a blank facade and calmly drank some sake that was given earlier, doing her best to ignore what was happening. Although every so often her right eyebrow would twitch ever so slightly, indicating her displeasure, and it only got worse as Kimiko and Kushina continued their teasing of Rurichio and Naruto. Ooh. Could it be that you have a thing for Naruto-kun here? Cooed Kimiko, smiling like a cat who caught the canary. This comment of course resulted in Naruto almost spitting out the water he had been drinking, resulting in him having a coughing fit. Rurichio on the other hand screamed, "Aunt Kimmy!" and turned even redder, where most thought that she would blow steam out of her ears at any second. This reaction of course caused everyone, minus Tsunade, Naruto and Rurichio, to burst out laughing, much to the embarrassment of the two adolescents. But just when they thought things couldn't get any, Kushina decided to join in. "Oh, well, she better watch out since Naruto here is quite the player, and she has quite the bit of competition already." "Really?" asked Kimiko, who seemed rather interested at the news. "Oh yay, excluding the rather large number of fangirls who are after him. There are several girls that stand out who are quite smitten with him already." "Oh my, please do go on," encouraged the elder fire princess, who was finding the news quite interesting, not to mention entertaining. Given the murderous look Naruto was giving his sensei, while still recovering from nearly choking on his water. "Well, there is Hyuga Hisahi's eldest daughter Hinata, the niece of Inuzuka Chum, Yamanaka Inoiki's daughter Ino, who also happens to be the leader of his little fan club. Then there is a Hyoten user named Haku from Kiri, as well as Hattori Mei, Sanshuo no Hanzo, Hanzo the Salamander, granddaughter. And we of course can't forget Yugito-chan now, can we, Naruto?" said Kushina with clear mirth in her eyes, when she saw the angry look Naruto gave her that told her he would get her back for this. "Oh my," said Kimiko, giggling a little, while thinking about how much fun she could have with this bit of information. She could also see that her niece was rather annoyed with the fact that she had competition for Naruto's affection. "I told you before, sensei, it's not like that, they're just friends." "Oh really? So does that mean you tongue kiss all your female friends and grope their breast in public?" Kushina retorted with an evil smirk, which only grew when Naruto turned cherry red and started to sputter, as he tried to think of a comeback to her remark. At the same time Rurichio also turned red again and glanced at Naruto, before she started to shake her head in denial when images of Naruto doing things like that started to appear in her head. This of course caused a great deal laughter to erupt at the expense of the two young blondes. Fortunately though, their salvation came when Tsunade, who was already irked by the fact that another girl was after her baby boy, decided to change the topic of the conversation. For the next hour or so, the group talked about different things, such as Tsunade's upcoming inauguration as the Godime Hokage, her plans for the village, how long the fire Daimyo and his family would be staying, and other things. Eventually though, the group decided to move outside to the garden porch and enjoy the cool night air, where Naruto and Rurichio played in the garden with Kurimaru and Toten, while the adults watched them and drank the sake they had brought. "He's quite an interesting young man, your son," Kimiko remarked, watching Naruto run around the garden as Rurichio, Toten and Kurimaru tried to catch him. "That he is," Tsunade returned with a small smile as she slowly drank the sake in her plate. "In fact, he reminds me a great deal of his father, especially in regards to looks," finished Kimiko with a knowing smile, causing Tsunade to spit out her sake and stare at the younger woman in shock, with a look that screamed, "How the hell do you know?" I don't know what you're talking about," Tsunade said quickly as she tried to hide her shock, while at the same time glanced worriedly at the fire Daimyo and his wife. Thankfully, neither of them had heard the daughter's comment, where their attention was focused on Shizune and Kushina, whom they were talking to. Ho, 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 oh my Tsunade-sama, you truly do have the worst poker face I have ever seen, Kimiko laughed, before turning to look at Naruto, who was still playing. To be perfectly honest, it's not terribly difficult to figure out. I met Minato-san many times over the years and the physical resemblance between the two of them is too strong for them not to be related. In fact, the only reason I can come up with as to why no one else has figured it out as well is because most choose to ignore the resemblance, believing it a coincidence. Not that I blame them, of course, since the very idea of the Yondaime Hokage and you having a child together is unbelievable to say the least. Tell me, Kimiko asked as she turned to Tsunade, how is it that Naruto came to be? Surely you and the Yondaime Hokage weren't having an illicit affair, were you? Seeing the hunger look in the Fire Princess's eyes, Tsunade knew that the female samurai was dying to know the full story behind Naruto's birth. Feeling uncomfortable with sharing her personal history, Tsunade turned away from the younger woman and began to pour herself more sake. I'm afraid that is a rather personal matter, Kimiko-sama, and I would not feel comfortable telling. Sadly though for Tsunade, her obvious embarrassment and refusal to tell Kimiko what happened between Minato and her, confirmed what the Fire Princess had already suspected. Of course I understand, Tsunade-sama, replied the Fire Princess as she poured herself a new drink. But does that then mean that the reason you and Minato spelt together is because the both of you got drunk? No sooner had Kimiko finished, Tsunade once again spat her sake out in surprise, and gave her the same shocked look as before, causing the younger woman to smile as she took another sip of her own sake. I'll take that as a yes, replied the still smiling Kimiko, and upon seeing the dumb confused look on Tsunade's face, the Fire Princess decided to tell the Slug Princess how she figured it out. Again, it wasn't very difficult to figure out. As I said earlier, the idea of you and Minato-san conceiving a child together is unbelievable, given the various different reasons, and yet it still happened. So I asked myself, how did such an unexpected union happen? And I came up with only 3 possibilities. The first was that you, Minato-san, or the both of you together, secretly planned and organized the incident in the hope of not only resurrecting the Senju clan, but also in the hope of producing a powerful child together. The second possibility was that you secretly artificially inseminated yourself with the Yondaime Hokage's sperm. Both ideas were of course highly unlikely, given how neither of you were the type to do either of those things, which of course left only one possibility. That at some point 14 years ago, Naruto is nearly 13, you and Minato-san met up, and given how much you enjoyed sake, the two of you got drunk and spent the night together, resulting in Naruto-san. Your denial and obvious embarrassment when I asked you how Naruto-san was conceived, just confirmed it. When Kimiko finished, she was amused to find the soon-to-be Hokage staring at her with a disbelieving look. Eventually though, Tsunade recovered from surprise and just shook her head. Damn girl must be part Nara, she's too smart for her own good. But before she could comment on Kimiko figuring out the truth herself, the elder Fire Princess once again spoke. You also need not worry about me leaking out the information on who Naruto's father is. I am well aware of the problems it could cause you, your family and Konoha, should the information be learned by certain people. So I will maintain your secret and tell no one, including my parents, although I am certain they would keep it secret if you explained your reasons for it. Thank you, said Tsunade, who was indeed relieved to hear that Kimiko would keep the identity of Naruto's father hidden. As for the Daimyo-sama and Shijimi-sama, I do not doubt they would keep it secret, but the fewer people know about who Naruto's father is, the less likely it will leak out. I understand, but still you should be proud, he is a fine young man, and he is already quite strong, Kimiko remarked, remembering her fight with Naruto, where he broke her sword sheath. Something that was not easily done, given how her sheath was made out of a special wood from trees that were grown and fed with chakra, making their wood very strong, which in turn made the sheath not only hard to replace but expensive to as well. But fortunately, she had a spare sheath made in the event that something happened to the original, hence it mattered little. Oh, I am, Tsunade replied with a smile, and he's only going to get stronger in the future. Nodding and smiling in agreement, Kimiko then turned to look back at the kids, where she and the others spent the rest of the evening, chatting, drinking and having an all-around good time. The next day, the whole village was bustling with activity, where crowds of people had gathered at the Hokage's mansion for Tsunade's inauguration as the Godime Hokage of the Hidden Leaf. Inside the mansion in the council room, which had been done up for the inauguration, a large body of people waited patiently for Tsunade arrived. The audience had been split up into 2 groups, each standing at opposite ends of the room, facing one another, allowing for a straight open path from the doorway to the altar, between the 2 groups. Among the people in the room was of course Naruto, who had been accompanied by Shizune, Tonton, Kurimaru, and his 2 senseis Yamato and Kushina, who Tsunade finally allowed to leave the hospital and return to duty. Upon entering the room, Naruto and his group made their way over to the altar, which had been set up for the ceremony, and stood near it, with Konohamaru and Asuma, who had arrived before them. Being related to the former Hokage and soon-to-be Godime Hokage, Naruto, Asuma and Konohamaru, were allowed to stand next to the altar. After greeting Konohamaru and Asuma, Naruto began to look around the room, which was filled with the various clan heads, both major and minor, and a large number of high-ranking shinobi, like Guy and Kakashi. He also saw several members of the Konoha and Fire Councils, along with several other important-looking officials. As he continued to look around, Naruto also saw Rurichio and her family, who nodded politely to him when they saw him. At the same time, Naruto also noticed that several of the Junin were giving Princess Kimiko, who was dressed in her normal attire, minus the hood and mask, nervous looks, indicating that they not only knew her, but feared her. Something that Naruto found perfectly understandable. Looking around further, Naruto also noticed that some of his friends were here as well, which wasn't entirely surprising either, given how each of their fathers, or mother in one case, was a member of the Konoha Council. The first of his friends that Naruto saw was Ino, who waved over at him, as she stood next to her parents. Ino's father Inaki, Naruto had of course recognized from the council meeting from earlier. Although the woman next to him, Naruto did not, and figured that she was Ino's mother, who he guessed was a civilian given her attire. Ino's mother had light brown eyes without pupils, similar in shape and size to her daughter, and had brown hair which is tied into a bun with a red ribbon in it. She had strands frame both sides of her face, hanging over her ears from behind. She was fair-skinned, like her daughter, although had slight wrinkles, which Naruto noticed, near her mouth. Her attire consisted of a dark teal elegant dress, which sported an aquamarine-colored gem below the collar. Standing next to Ino's family were Shikamaru and Choji's families, and upon seeing him, both boys acknowledged him. Although unlike their teammate, they were more subtle about it and simply nodded to him. Standing behind both boys were their respected parents, and although Naruto recognized their fathers, he was again unfamiliar with their mothers. But it wasn't hard to discern which of the two women were Choji and Shikamaru's mothers. Choji's mother was a full-bodied woman, which made it blatantly obvious that she was his mother. She had short, black hair and eyes which were accentuated by orange markings at each corner. She wore a light shade of lipstick, a pair of red, stud earrings along with a high-collared purple blouse which had gold trimmings and a pair of matching pants, and heeled sandals. Shikamaru's mother was of average height of a woman. She had long brown hair, which was kept in a low ponytail with 3 strands framing her face. Looking at her, Naruto could see a strong resemblance between her and Shikamaru, which made it easy to tell that she was his mother. She also wore the standard outfit of a Konoha shinobi with a matching flak jacket and uniform to her husband, which clearly indicated that unlike Ino and Choji's mothers, she was a kunoichi, or at least a former one. Looking around to see if he could see anyone else he knew, specifically Sasuke, who he had hoped to talk to, but never had the chance to due to recent events. Being the last heir to one of the founding clans of Konoha, Sasuke would have been invited to the ceremony. But there was no sign of the last loyal Uchiha in the room, which sadly was to no great surprise to the Senju heir. According to what Shizune and Kushina had told him, after leaving the hospital, Sasuke spent most of his time either at home or training in his clan's private training ground. Knowing that there was nothing he could do about it now, Naruto decided to continue to look for any of his other friend. Eventually he saw Shino and his father Shibi, who were standing in darkened corner of the room, almost completely out of sight of everyone. Seeing them, Naruto gave them a polite nod, a smile, to which both Aburame responded with a barely registered nod, which was to be expected of the two. After acknowledging the two Aburames, Naruto's attention turned again, after hearing an excited yelp from Kurimaru. Turning in the direction Kurimaru was looking at, Naruto saw Kiba and his family, standing near the doorway, with their respected canine partners. Seeing the family, Naruto smiled and waved at the family, who all waved and smiled back at him, or in Naku's case, blushed and waved. Shortly after, Naruto turned to the doorway and saw the Hyuga clan representatives enter the room. Among them were of course the Hyuga clan head Hyuga Hiashi and Hinata, as well as a young girl, who looked to be around Konohamaru's age, making Naruto guess she was Hinata's sister. With them as well were 2 elderly-looking Hyuga men, dressed in similar robes to Hiashi, who Naruto figured were members of the Hyuga Council that he had heard about from the Sandaime. During the council meeting, Naruto had paid little attention to Hiashi, but upon getting a better look of the man, Naruto had to admit he looked every bit the imposing noble figure that people made him out to be. Upon seeing the man, Naruto remembered the story Neji had told him about how his father and Hiashi had been twin brothers and how Hiashi had sacrificed Neji's father to save his own. Naruto also began to wonder if Hiashi really was the type of man Neji made him out to be, but soon decided to save his final judgment until he actually met and spoke to the man. After entering the room, the Hyuga clan representatives made their way near the altar, almost directly opposite Naruto and his group. Upon seeing the Senju heir, Hinata, who was dressed in an elegant white kimono with pink flower patterns, blushed bright and smiled shyly at him, before turning away, to fight down her blush. Her father on the other hand simply stared at him with a calculating stare, as if trying to figure him out, like some kind math problem, which unnerved Naruto a little. But he eventually decided to ignore the Hyuga clan head and turned his attention to Hinata's sister, who gave him the same calculating look as her father, although nowhere near as intense. Like Hinata, her sister was dressed in a matching kimono. She had the same large white eyes as Hinata. Although unlike Hinata, her physical appearance was more like their father, and possessed the same long dark brown hair as him, which fell to her lower back and was parted in bangs where a single lock of hair fell into her face. As Naruto watched at the Hyuga representatives, he noticed that the two Hyuga elders staring coldly at him, as if trying to intimidate him in some manner. Unafraid of the two elderly men, Naruto stared right back at the two men, showing that he not someone who could be easily intimidated. For the next minute or two, a stare-off began between Naruto and the two Hyuga elders, who after seeing that they could not intimidate Naruto, related and turned away from him. Seeing this, Naruto smirked at his own small victory. He knew that his defeat of Neji had not gone well with many in the Hyuga clan, especially with the way he had humiliated them in the Chunin exam. But even so, he didn't really care. With the exception of Hinata, he didn't hold the Hyuga clan in very high esteem, and if humiliating him a little, brought him down a peg or two, then that was simply a bonus. As more and more people entered the council room for the ceremony, Naruto took notice of one particular individual who hobbled into the room with a cane. This individual was of course easily recognized, since everyone in the room was familiar with the infamous Shimura Danzo, who was more commonly referred as Shinobi no Yami, the darkness of the shinobi, due to his militant and archaic views on the role of a shinobi. Danzo was as a frail, old-looking man. He had black shaggy hair, and his right eye was bandaged, indicating that he had lost it at some time. He had an X-shaped scar on his chin, and wore a white shirt, with a black robe over the top of it, covering from his feet to just over his right shoulder, indicating he had also lost his right arm as well at some point in time. But despite his feeble-like appearance, Naruto and others were still weary of him, since in the shinobi world, appearances were deceptive, and just because he was old, it didn't mean he was weak. As Danzo made his way to the altar, he caught sight of Naruto and his group and slowly made his way over to this. Seeing this, Shizune placed her hand on Naruto's left shoulder and gripped him tightly in a protective manner. At the same time, Asuma moved Konohamaru over closer to him, while Kushina moved closer to Naruto. Yamato made no movements, although frowned slightly when he saw the old war hawk and kept his eyes focused on him. Tonton and Kurimaru on the other hand moved in front of Naruto and looked ready to attack the old man, indicating that they consider him a threat. When Danzo reached them, the old man could clearly see that everyone in the group was on edge. "What do you want, Danzo?" Kushina asked with barely disguised hostility. Paying the former Anbu captain little heed, Danzo kept his eyes trained solely on Naruto, which made the blonde boy feel uncomfortable. Despite his frail-like appearance and being only of average height, Danzo possessed an intimidating presence that made him seem bigger and more dangerous. "Senju Naruto, it is a pleasure to finally meet you again, given how we had little chance to speak last time," said Danzo. "Danzo-san," Naruto replied without any emotion. "I understand that you were dealing with some rather difficult trauma from your recent battle with Uchiha Itachi. I hope you have recovered." Surprised by how Danzo knew of his emotional problems after his fight with Itachi, Naruto struggled to keep from frowning and keep his face blank. "Yes, I have fully recovered now, thank you for asking. I am pleased to hear that, given recent events, Konoha needs every capable shinobi it has, not only to rebuild, but to defend it and its people." Danzo then turned around to look at the gathering people. "This is quite an auspicious day. One Hokage steps down and another takes his place. You must be very proud of your mother." "I am. That you should. Your mother is finally living up to her noble lineage." This statement of course caused several of the others to frown, as they had caught the carefully placed insult. But before anyone could make any kind of retort, Danzo continued. Also, it is possible that next time Konoha has this ceremony, it will be Tsunade who is stepping down and it will be you who will take her place. That is my intention, Naruto returned, while doing his best to keep his face void of any emotion, so not to give anything away. Given your performance at the Chunin exam and the recent invasion, I am certain you will one day. You showed remarkable strength and courage when faced with difficult obstacles. Still keeping his face blank, Naruto replied, I simply did what any shinobi of Konoha would have done, or should do. I defended my village and my home. Indeed, remarked Danzo, who like Naruto kept his face void of any emotions, letting nothing slip. Although just for a split moment, the blonde boy could have sworn he saw something like approval shining through his eye when he heard Naruto's words. But still, you've already proven to be a remarkable young man, given your recent victory over the Nibi Jinchuriki in the Chunin exam and your victory over the Shukaku Jinchuriki in the invasion, which saved many lives. The names are Yugito and Gaara, Naruto said calmly, although there was a hint of anger in his voice, after hearing the way Danzo referred to them. I believe you can say the names, Danzo-san. He did not shy away from Danzo's sharp gaze, in fact he stared right back at the elderly man, showing his nerve, causing Shizune to tighten her grip on Naruto's shoulder. The old war hawk's lips grew so thin they seemed to disappear. He grunted, Saraikan, and then broke his gaze from Naruto's, and after a minute or two of silence he spoke again. I was rather impressed with your fights in the finals, specifically your futon, wind release, skills. You have a great deal of talent in futon. Thanks, Naruto replied, I had a good teacher, where he then glanced over at Asuma, who smirked back. Sparing a minor glance for the son of his former rival, Danzo turned his attention back on Naruto. Indeed, he said, but even so, if you are interested in learning how to use your futon skills to their full extent, I am certain I could help you, as well as other areas. Thank you, but I have enough teachers for the time being, Naruto politely refused. Betraying nothing, Danzo simply nodded, very well, but should you change your mind the offer will remain open indefinitely. He then turned to the altar and stared Hokage's hat and robes, which sat on the altar. Being Hokage is no easy thing, and although your mother has my qualities that would make her a reasonable Hokage, one still cannot help but wonder if she is up to the task, especially given her troubling issues in the past and the fact that she left the village. Again the group caught Danzo's small insults to Tsunade, where most of them glared angrily at the old man, who simply stared back at them. Shizune and Naruto were especially angry by Danzo's words, since those issues, that Danzo had so calmly put it, were the deaths of Nawaki and Dan. People who Tsunade loved, and whose loss still affected her today, it made even more infuriating to them, given how they were related to said people. Naruto himself was struggling to rein in his temper, where he could feel his blood boiling from within, and wanted nothing more than punch the one-eyed man right in his wrinkled old face. But after a few minutes Naruto calmed himself down and looked directly into Danzo. I can assure Danzo-san, my mother's issues are, as you say, in the past, and therefore can no longer hurt or affect her, and she will more than prove herself worthy of the title. A belief that not only does the Sandaime, and the Fire Daimyo share, but also the Jonin Council, who unanimously agreed that my mother was the most suitable candidate on the list to become Hokage. Naruto was then gratified to see Danzo's left eyebrow twitch slightly, indicating that he had irked the infamous war hawk. Naruto was of course not the only one who noticed this, as Kushina, Asuma and Shizune had all seen it as well and smirked. They knew Naruto had hit Danzo's in a sore spot, since he had now been passed over as Hokage for the third time, which no doubt bothered him. We shall see, replied Danzo before turning around and hobbling over to the opposite end of them, next to the altar. I really don't like that guy, said Naruto once Danzo had left. I don't think there's anyone in the village who really likes him, Kushina remarked. Some may respect him in some manner, but that's about it. Most people just fear Danzo, although he loves the village and would do just about anything for it. The problem is that nobody really trusts him, added Asuma. He also doesn't know how to inspire loyalty in people, that's why he has been passed over so many times to be Hokage, or at least that's what my pops say. The only way Danzo can get people to follow him, is if he manipulates them or brainwashes them when they're young, said Kushina, before turning to Naruto and smiling. Nice going with him there, brat. I almost thought you were going to punch that one-eyed bastard. I almost did, but I didn't want to spoil Ka-chan's day with me sending one of the elders into the hospital. You did well, Naruto-kun, said Shizune, but still you should be careful. Danzo is a dangerous man, but still I'm surprised by how forward he was when he offered to train you. It's not like him to do something like that, especially since he knows that Tsunade-sama would never allow him to be near you. Danzo knows how valuable Naruto is, and he knows that we know he wants him. This is just his way of saying that even though Tsunade-sama has become Hokage, he still hasn't given up on getting Naruto to join his side, answered Kushina. Hey, scoffed Naruto, like hell I would ever join a creep like him. Don't underestimate Danzo, Shizune warned, he has ways of getting to people, and is unafraid to use underhanded means to achieve his goals. Agreed, joined Yamato, even the Sandaime-sama is wary of him. Yay, well that doesn't mean I will join him anytime soon, or let him insult Ka-chan whenever he wants, returned Naruto. But before he could say anything further, he noticed the crowd's attention turn to the doorway. When Naruto and the others looked, they saw the Sandaime and his two former teammates Mitokado Homura and Utatane Koharu entering the room with Tsunade walking behind them. When Tsunade entered the room, everyone immediately noticed her new appearance for the ceremony. Instead of her usual hairstyle, Tsunade had done her hair up in a large bun, with a hair comb and two large hairpins in it. But thing that caught most people's attention was the elegant kimono jacket, which she wore over her normal attire, giving her a refined look that seemed fitting not only for a Hokage, but for a member of esteemed Senju clan. The kimono was primarily white with red flames-like motifs on the edges and long red frills dangling from her long sleeves with the kanji for, the wall of fire, written vertically down the back, and closed by a red rope that was tied around her waist. 8. Naturally everyone had noticed the similarities between Tsunade's kimono, and the Haori that the Yondaime Hokage was known for wearing and figured that this was her way of paying homage to the now deceased Hokage. But actually, the kimono had been Naruto's idea, who had it made for her and gave it as a gift to wear for the ceremony. When Tsunade saw the kimono, she had immediately questioned her son on the design, to which he replied. Gigi told me a while back that each Hokage inherits the will of fire from the previous Hokage, and since Tu-san was the Yondaime and you're now the Godaime. By having you wear the same kind of flames as Tu-san on your kimono, it shows that you have now inherited the will of fire from him. Later when she told the Sandaime, the old Hokage could not help but laugh and commented on how Naruto was already thinking like a Hokage. After Naruto had given her the kimono, Tsunade had been a bit hesitant in wearing it and had considered not wearing it for the ceremony. She still hadn't forgiven Minato for turning their son into a Jinchuriki and inadvertently making him a target for the Akatsuki and others. But after the invasion, she found her anger for the former Hokage lessening, since it had been thanks to the Kyuubi that Naruto was still alive. After much thought, she decided to wear the kimono, not only for Naruto's sake, but also as a small sign of respect for the father of her son. Once Tsunade, the Sandaime and the elders reached the altar, they began the Hokage ceremony, which involved Tsunade swearing an oath to protect the village and its people and uphold the ideals that it was founded upon for as long as she was Hokage. After which she drank the ceremonial tea, where the Sandaime then placed the Hokage's ceremonial necklace around her neck followed by the Hokage's hat. Upon which he then declared her Godaime Hokage of Konohagakure, Hidden Leaf, to audience, who cheered and applauded. After the ceremony, Tsunade, the Sandaime and the elders made their way up to the rooftop of the Hokage's mansion, where Tsunade then declared herself the Godaime Hokage to the people below, who also cheered loudly to their new Hokage. A few hours following Tsunade's inauguration as Hokage, Naruto received word from his mother to report to Hokage's office. When he arrived he was surprised to find Shikamaru and Sai standing at the double doors with Shizune, who now acted as his mother's assistant. Given how the Sandaime secretary seemingly resigned the day before. 9. Upon seeing Naruto, Shizune immediately smiled. Oh Naruto-kun, you're here, good, they're waiting for you inside. They asked Naruto, who still didn't know why he had been called here and why Shikamaru and Sai were here, who seemed just as confused. But before any of them could even ask the young Kunoichi, Shizune opened the double doors to the Hokage's office revealing Tsunade, sitting at the Hokage's desk, still dressed in her ceremonial attire, with the Sandaime and the fire Daimyo standing on opposite sides of her. Hello again, Naruto-kun, greeted the smiling fire Daimyo. Hey Oji-san, old man, said Naruto before covering his mouth and crying, oops, after realizing he had done. Naruto, cried an angry Tsunade, as she couldn't believe her son called the fire daimyo old man, again. Shizune on the other had simply groaned and covered her eyes. Cringing at his mother's angry voice, a now panicking Naruto quickly raised his hands and began to wave them. Sorry, it was an accident, it just slipped out. Fortunately though, before Naruto could apologize any further, the group heard the distinctive sound of the fire daimyo chuckling. Ho 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 ho, worry not Tsunade-san, no harm is done, in fact I have rather missed Naruto-kun calling me that. Seeing that fire daimyo was not angry, Tsunade sighed and glared at her son, who grinned embarrassingly and scratched the back of his head. The Sandaime although just chuckled, since things were never dull around his surrogate grandson. Hoping to hurry things along, so that he could go back to his cloud gazing, Shikamaru raised his hand to get Tsunade's attention. Excuse me, but why exactly did you call us here? Right, said Tsunade, since thanks to the brief distraction she had almost forgotten the reason she had called the three boys here. Well, the reason I called you three is here is because, but before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by an ear-splitting, HHYYYAAAAAA. From the village below, followed by an angry, NNNAAARRRUUUTTTOOO. After hearing the scream, everyone immediately turned to the perpetrator, who was grinning ear to ear when he first heard the scream. It was a grin that Shizune, Sarutobi and Tsunade knew all too well, having seen it one too many times after Naruto pulled off a successful prank on someone. Sighing tiredly, Tsunade simply stared at her son. What did you do this time, Naruto, and who was it? Oh, nothing much, just a little payback on Kushina-sensei for last night, a still grinning Naruto shrugged. Knowing that there would probably be retaliation for this later on, from the female Uzumaki, Tsunade and Shizune groaned and slapped their foreheads. The Sandaime and the fire daimyo on the other hand simply chuckled. Shikamaru just shook his head and muttered something about troublesome blondes, while Sai looked bemused, wondering what Naruto did to the former Anbu captain. After a few more minutes of chuckling from certain people, the occupants of the office eventually got back to the matter at hand, which was the reason for why Naruto, Shikamaru and Sai were called here. Now, as I was saying, before being interrupted, where Tsunade glanced at her son, who simply smirked. The reason why I have called you three here is to present you with these, where she then took out three green flak jackets. Given how well the three of you performed in not only the Chunin finals, but also in the recent invasion, and adding recommendation of various judges, cages and your Jonin senseis, I am pleased to present the three of you with these flak jackets and the rank of Chunin. No sooner had Tsunade said this, a loud, all right, erupted from Naruto, who then punched his fists into the air and began cheering. Seeing how happy and excited Naruto was, the adults in the room couldn't help but smile, where Shizune ruffled his hair and bent down and kissed his head. Much to the embarrassment of the blonde boy, who blushed red and moaned, "Nei-chan." Which made the woman laugh. Smiling at her son, Tsunade knew how much this meant to her son, and it made her extremely proud to be the one to give him his flak jacket as a Chunin. Normally, they would have waited for a few days to do this, but due to an important announcement that the fire daimyo was to make, who would be leaving tomorrow, it was decided that they would give the boys their ranks today. As Naruto continued to cheer about becoming Chunin, and how he was one step closer to becoming Hokage, Tsunade glanced at Shikamaru, who simply looked bored, if not slightly annoyed, which was typical of Nara, and Sai, who still had his fake smile on. The Sandaime had already filled her in on who Sai was and who he really worked for and what his real mission was, and although she was reluctant to make Sai a Chunin, she could not deny the boy's skill and abilities, and if she refused him after being recommended by several judges, daimyos and the Mizukage, it would cause too much suspicion. After receiving their flak jackets from Tsunade, Naruto suddenly remembered something he had heard from Shizune not too long ago. Hey Ka-chan, what happened to all the money that you won from betting on me in the finals? At the mention of her winnings, a large cloud of depression hung over the female Hokage. I lost it all, she moaned, where she then began to sulk over the amount of money she had lost, causing nearly everyone in the office to develop large sweat drops at the back of their heads. How did that happen? Naruto asked, wondering how his mother could have lost so much money so quickly. At this question, Tsunade turned and glared at the Sandaime, who seemingly developed a coughing fit to disguise his mirth over the whole sorted affair. It seems that there is a little clause when betting in the finals, that someone forgot to mention, where she glared at the Sandaime again, who was still coughing. The clause states that all beats are finalized and cannot be taken back, even if a scheduled match does not happen, and if no winner has been decided, the money from the beats goes straight to the village. I did warn you not get too carried away, Tsunade. You could have at least warned me about that, you scam artist. Tsunade rounded as she glared murderously at her former sensei, and had almost strangled him, when she learned of the clause. Upon hearing what happened, Naruto and Shizune simply groaned and shook their heads, as Tsunade's bad luck had struck again. Sai and the fire daimyo on the other hand seemed amused and smiled at the affair, then again Sai tended to smile most of the time. Shikamaru though simply rolled his eyes, finding it too troublesome to care. Eventually though, the group decided to move on from Tsunade's lost winnings and to other matters. The female Hokage then told Sai he could go, but asked Shikamaru and Naruto to stay, stating that the fire daimyo wanted to talk to them about an important matter. When Sai left the office, the fire daimyo then spoke. Before the two of you leave to celebrate your well-deserved promotions, I would like to make you both an offer. What sort of offer? Shikamaru asked with a slight frown. Although I am unsure if you have heard, several years ago there was an incident involving my personal guard, the Shugonin Junichi, 12 gentleman guardian ninja. 6 of the members attempted to overthrow me and replace me with someone they could control. But fortunately they were stopped by the other remaining members. One of whom happens to be your sensei Shikamaru-san, causing the young Nara to raise his eyebrow in surprise. Sadly though the resulting battle all but destroyed the guard, save for your sensei, Sarutobi Asuma and one other, and for the past few years I have been attempting to rebuild the group. That is why I would like invite you both to join Shugonin Junichi, since I was very impressed with your battles in the finals, and I believe you would make excellent members. Naturally upon hearing the fire daimyo's offer, both boys were shocked, since being a member of the Shugonin Junichi was considered a great honor in Hai no Kuni. Even Shizune seemed stunned by the news, where she let out a gasp before and covered her mouth with both hands. The only ones that didn't seem surprised by the announcement were Tsunade and the Sandaime, who already knew what the fire daimyo was going to say, given how he had told them earlier on. When he first told them, like the others, the two Hokages had been shocked, since to become a member of Fire Daimyo's elite personal guard was a rare and prestigious honor that was not given to just anyone. But to be recruited at the tender age of 12, after only just becoming Chunin, was unheard of, although it showed just how highly the Fire Daimyo thought of the two boys' skills. Tsunade had of course wanted to deny the Fire Daimyo, saying that Naruto was still too young. Although secretly it was also because of a selfish need to keep her son close, since one of the main reasons she became Hokage was so that she could watch over Naruto and protect him. But before she could say anything to the Fire Daimyo, the Sandaime intervened, knowing what Tsunade was thinking and asked to speak to her privately. Once they were alone, he then told her of how he too had once tried to stop his son Asuma from joining Shugonin Junichi, believing he was not yet ready and that it was better if he stayed in Konoha. Also like her, he did not want his son to leave and wanted to keep him near him. But sadly Asuma lashed out at him for interfering with his life and accused him of wanting to prevent him from stepping out of the Sandaime's shadow. Shortly after, Asuma left to join the Shugonin Junichi, and rarely spoke or wrote to his father, causing a great rift between the two of them. Hoping to prevent Tsunade from making the same mistake he did, Sarutobi told her that Naruto was a shinobi now and that he old enough to make his own choices and to let him decide what he wanted to do with his life. The Sandaime also went on to say that if she continued to try and keep Naruto close to her, it will eventually cause him to rebel and drive a wedge between them. Not wanting to have Naruto resent her, and seeing the wisdom in her teacher's words, Tsunade relented and agreed to let Naruto decide if he wanted to accept the Fire Daimyo's offer and to support him if he did. After the Fire Daimyo made his offer, both boys remained silent for several minutes, as they considered the daimyo's generous offer. The offer was of course very tempting for Naruto, since for a long time, he had desired to step out of his family's shadow, and do something that would distinguish himself from them, where people acknowledge him for his own deeds, and not for his family's. Becoming a member of Shugonin Junichi would do that for him, since no one in his family had become a member Shugonin Junichi. It would also not interfere with his dream of becoming Hokage, since after a few years he could retire from the group and return to Konoha and work on becoming Hokage. The downside though was that he would have to move to the capital and away from his family and friends. Although he had only been in Konoha for about 8 months, it had already started feeling like home to him and he did not like the idea of leaving. There was also the fact that he still had things to do in Konoha, like mastering his Mokuton powers, completing his sword training with Kushina. Not to mention finding the Valley of the Four Winds, which the Shodai had mentioned to him, along with other things he needed to do here. After a great deal of thought, Naruto eventually came to a decision. Thanks you for the offer, but my place is here in Konoha, with my family and friends. Same here, replied Shikamaru, who like Naruto felt like his place was here in Konoha, helping to protect his family and friends. Not to mention the fact that the young Nara thought the whole ordeal in becoming a member of the group would be too troublesome to deal with. Are you too sure about this? Asked the Sandaime, although both he and Tsunade were secretly delighted with the boys wanting to stay in Konoha. Neither of them wished for the two boys to have any regrets. Your being offered is a rare and great opportunity, which is not given to everyone. Ye were sure, replied Naruto, where he and Shikamaru nodded. Who? Sighed the fire Daimyo, who seemed a little disappointed with the boy's answer, but not surprised. I figured that would be your answer, but I wanted to at least try. Regardless though, the offer will remain open for some time. So if either of you should reconsider, there will be no issues in you joining the guard. Nodding in understanding, both boys thanked the fire Daimyo and said that they would inform him if they changed their mind. Nevertheless, I suppose this works out best for everyone. What do you mean? Tsunade asked. Oh yes, how silly of me to have for forgetting, said the fire Daimyo, who seemed amused by his own forgetfulness. As the Sandaime has no doubt mentioned to you, given the recent invasion, many of my advisors and other lords have grown concerned that Konoha has become lax in these peaceful times. Even with your appointment as Hokage, there are still those who are skeptical, hence I have decided to have my granddaughter Princess Rurichio remain here for a time, as a sign of my continued confidence and support of Konoha. Stunned by the news, most of the occupants of the office could only gap, although Tsunade soon came around and spoke. Excuse me Daimyo-sama, but are you sure about this? She is your granddaughter after all. Oh, are you saying that you would be unable to protect my granddaughter? The fire Daimyo asked. No, of course not, Tsunade replied quickly. I was just thought you would prefer to have her stay with you and the rest of your family at the capital. Well, although it is true that both my wife and I would enjoy having our granddaughter near us. Rurichio-chan has been rather persistent in wanting to see other places, and given how she already has friends here in Konoha, who can show her around, it works out perfectly. In fact, when I mentioned the idea to her, she seemed rather ecstatic by the news. Yes, I've no doubt she was, said Tsunade as she turned to her son and gave him a clearly forced smile, making said boy gulp and laugh nervously, where he began to wonder if it wasn't too late to take the fire Daimyo up on his offer. The following morning, Naruto and his family, the Sandaime and the elders, gathered at the main gate with Rurichio and her guards Kenru and Enru to say goodbye to her grandparents. Accompany them was also Princess Kimiko, who decided to return with them to the capital for a short time to visit her brother. As Naruto watched Rurichio bid farewell to her grandparents and aunt, the blonde boy, along with many other shinobi nearby, was struggling hard not to laugh at his Jonin sensei Kushina, whose hair had gone from red to bright green and her skin had turned bright orange. Needless to say, the former Anbu captain had been quite shocked when she saw herself in the mirror after stepping out of the shower yesterday. 10. It was only afterwards that Kushina discovered that Naruto had switched her regular shampoo with green dye and added orange dye to her apartment's water tank, which resulted in her current appearance. As Kushina listened to the various snickering and laughter, the former redhead was wishing that she was still in Anbu, just so that she had her mask to hide her embarrassment. Knowing that was impossible right now, Kushina settled with just glaring at her student, who was making a miserable attempt at hiding his own amusement, and swore vengeance. After a few minutes, Naruto was suddenly pulled into a bone-breaking hug by Madame Shijimi, who rambled on about how she was going to miss him and telling him to take of Rurichio. As the fire daimyo's wife continued to hug him, the blonde boy could almost feel his spine about ready to snap, making him wonder if Madame Shijimi somehow possessed the same superhuman strength as his mother and him. Fortunately though, before that could happen, the fire daimyo arrived to Naruto's rescue and had his wife let him go. After which he then offered his hand, which Naruto politely took and shook. It was good to see you again, Naruto-kun. I'm certain we will see each other again soon. I hope so too, Daimyo-sama, replied Naruto, making sure to address the fire daimyo by his proper title. Please, if you like, you can keep calling me Oji-san, as I will make a special exception just for you, said the fire Daimyo with a kind smile. Really? Said Naruto in surprise, not noticing the stunned look on everyone else's faces. Thanks Uchiha, cried Naruto as he felt his mother smack him hard on the back of the head. Naruto, you will address the fire Daimyo by his proper title, scolded Tsunade. But he said, it does not matter, you will still address him with respect, retorted the busty woman angrily. Seeing Tsunade scolding her son, the fire Daimyo couldn't help but chuckle since the two Senju were always a great source of amusement for him. After the fire Daimyo said goodbye to Naruto, Princess Kimiko walked over to him and like her father, offered her hand to Naruto. It was a pleasure meeting you Naruto-kun. Likewise Kimiko-sama, replied Naruto as he took the elder fire princess's hand and shook it, but as he did, he suddenly felt her hand tighten around his, nearly crushing it. You will of course take good care of my niece? Asked Kimiko, who kindly smiled down at the young Senju heir. But as she smiled down at him, a dark menacing aura began form and hover around her, turning her kind smile into something sinister. Of course, said Naruto quickly, while sweating up a storm, as he got the underlining warning within Kimiko's words. But his nervousness only grew when Kimiko's grip tightened and moved down closer to him. Good, as I would hate to hear of something happening to her when I return to visit, replied Kimiko, where when she said this, her dark aura took on the form of a devil, true to her moniker, making her that more intimating. Not trusting his mouth, Naruto gulped audibly and fervently nodded his head, after which Kimiko let go of Naruto and joined her parents, where he then watched them board their palanquins and begin their journey back to the capital. As Naruto watched the royal family and their entourage walk away, the blonde boy could not help but wonder what sort of mess he had gotten himself into their time. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.